What is happening, everybody? Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is indeed my show. It is a Friday. We're at the end of the week. I have a damn good show planned for you today, a long show planned for you today. I'm playing makeup. I'm going to send a message to Morandi. I'm going to try to get him on the show today. There is a message out that Iran has responded to Donald Trump's letter. That letter that Donald Trump sent was, let's say, full of threats. One of those threats apparently gave Iran 2 months to come into some kind of negotiations. Iran pointedly, as they should, have said, look, we're not going to negotiate under threat. That is not going to happen. But they seem to be back channel conversations. And in those back channel communications, Iran effectively pointed out that they would negotiate in a back channel way. Now, look, from my point of view, a negotiation is a negotiation, whether it's taking place directly or indirectly. It may take place indirectly because of political issues, like we look weak if we negotiate directly under threat. Doesn't really change if you do it indirectly. I'm fascinated by human beings, especially in the political sense. Because what they do is, I'll say it this way, and I'll use the astrological thing either, though. I don't really give this much weight. There is what people call the ascendant, and there's what people call sun sign. The sun is who the person effectively is. And by the way, I know this stuff because when I was a kid, I was very new age. The sun sign is the beating heart of the person. It's like the core of that person. 3 a.m. between them and their God, what are they? That's the sun sign. The ascendant is the mask. That is, this is how you engage with the regular public. But understand that the reason that the core is not necessarily shown is because the core needs to be protected. It is terrified that it will be criticized, that it will be mocked, that it will be undercut in some way by this hostile world which we engage. So the mask that we wear is the thing that we are comfortable with exposing to the American public or to the public. It's kind of like that to me. You have this thing of, okay, we're Iran, we're strong, we're proud, we're not going to negotiate under threat. However, we will do this in a de facto sense, meaning the position that we're willing to take and expose to the world, the thing that we're comfortable with showing as the face is a back channel negotiation. Okay, is that really a difference per se? I know I'm not, maybe I am slightly criticizing Iran for this. Maybe I'm not, I don't know. I guess I'm asking the question, is it a negotiation as a negotiation? From my point of view, I could be wrong. John Kiriakou is going to be on the show. He wrote the book on Iran. I'll ask him himself. What it means, though, is that Pezeshkian's position, the president, seems to be taking hold, even if it's not so in direct sense. If you remember, and I didn't mean to open on this, but fair enough, Pezeshkian initially had the position of, I want to negotiate. Ayatollah comes out and says, I don't want to negotiate. We're not going to negotiate under threat. This is a bad idea. Now, it is believed that Pezeshkian was the restraining force in True Promise 3. There was talk about him accepting the U.S. position on the issue of Gaza, that he believed Joe Biden, when Joe Biden said, I'm going to end this conflict, I'm going to get a ceasefire, all the stuff, in which case he held off on attacks on Israel. He seems to be the less politically astute person in the Iranian government. I'll use those terms. Because I do believe on some level it might have been a mistake for them not to be more aggressive during the Joe Biden administration. But whatever, protect his side. His position was, I want to negotiate. Ayatollah's position was, we are not negotiating. Pezeshkian comes out and says, okay, fair enough. I will align my position with the Ayatollah. But I would imagine, just like any government, there are communications that take place within the bodies of that government. And it seems, at the very least, the reporting that has been coming out is that Iran has decided that it's willing to negotiate in a back channel way. There has been no talk about what is in that letter. No talk. And for the longest time, we didn't even know what was in Trump's letter. But I was trying to pull an article, see if I find an article. Either way, There's been no reporting on what is in the Ayatollah's letter, none at all. The only information that's been coming out is that there's a willingness to negotiate in a back channel way. This letter was apparently delivered through Oman. Again, we're going with the whole back channel stuff. And so we will see how this unfolds. We will see what this ultimately means, if it means anything at all. And I can't find the article. Damn it. I was looking for the specific article on it. Either way, everything I've just said was effectively, here we are. So Al Jazeera, plenty of outlets are reporting this. I just picked the one from Al Jazeera. This is going to repeat everything that I've just said. So there's no point in me reading it. But super interesting. Iran has responded to Oman to a letter by the United States President Donald Trump, in which he urged Tehran to reach a new nuclear deal. Iranian state media reported. Iran's official IRNA news agency published an article on Thursday citing Foreign Minister Abba, I'll go for it, risk it all, Arghachi, nailed it, as saying the Iranian response to Trump's letter was appropriately sent through Oman. And I would imagine it was appropriately sent through Oman because we are not in direct channel negotiations, so we're not going to respond to you directly. You sent this letter to us indirectly. We're sending this back to you indirectly. We are not, chomping at the bit. We're not concerned. We're not bothered. We're not worried. We're cool as a cucumber. We are, what is that cat from Pakistan? Oh, I can't think of his name. It'll come to me in a moment. Where he's sitting there, the soccer guy who they put into prison, the president, what is his name? Imran Khan. Imran Khan is the coolest man on the planet, from my point of view. Less than Captain Kirk. But right there. He's right there. There's a scene, there's a video where the cops are coming to get him. They're beating down the door, literally beating down the door to come after him. And he's sitting there, legs crossed, just waiting. That level of repose is epic in scope. The notion that the cops are coming to get me, they're beating down the door, the protesters outside trying to protect me in this process because I'm so popular, but they're coming to get me. And he's just, I wonder what's for dinner. Maybe I should get a glass of Chardonnay. It's that. Now, the problem from Iran's point of view in regards to this optic of cool as a cucumber is that they're willing to negotiate at all. I hope you get my point, right? If you tell me I'm not negotiating with you because you're threatening me, however, I do it in the back channel, that's still a negotiation. Sorry, bro, still a negotiation. Any way you look at it. I appreciate them negotiating, but from Iran's point of view, we can take this stance. This is a stronger stance than direct negotiations, but we do want to negotiate. And so we need to find a way to thread the needle where we can get our negotiation without getting our negotiation and getting hit for it. So we were doing direct channel negotiations. And I love, this is the part of politics I'm fascinated by because it's a human thing. I'll give you another example. Countries. When countries would say, all right, we have nuclear powers on the planet. If these nuclear powers get into a war, that's the end of all things. So we can't do that. I know we can use proxies. And proxies can fight the country that we want to fight with nuclear weapons. And even though we're giving them all the weapons and money in the world, we can still say, well, we're not really attacking you. And because we're not really attacking you, you can't respond with nuclear force in the way that you would if we actually attacked you. Okay, again, you're attacking the country. But again, from a human level of thinking about it, it's, well, we're not really attacking you. And so you really don't have just cause to hit us in terms. Meaning you can't drop an regiment on the UK and France, even though the UK and France is filling the country with weapons and killing the Russians. From my point of view, you're fair game. That's my point of view. But so same token, the point of view has consequences, meaning the end of all things. It's just fascinating to me. The way we appraise the stuff is just utterly and entirely fascinating. Nevertheless, that is where we are on the Iran subject matter. The other issue that is very fascinating, what time is it? I guess it's coming at 7:30. Okay, we have time. The other issue that is fascinating is that I keep leaning to this mic without thinking about leaning into this one. Two things. One, Zelensky in Paris gets bupkis. What he does get, however, is the European powers doing any and everything in their power to undercut Trump's negotiations in regards to ending the war. Now, Alexander McCurry made a really good point that I really didn't consider, but I think it's something that he may not. He didn't mention in his previous video, but we mentioned it prior. What does Putin give for negotiations? Isn't that a fascinating question? You win a war. You beat the stuffing out of all of NATO and the US combined. What do you give to end the conflict? Now, two things. That's assuming A, you want to end the conflict, because from your point of view, the issue is Kiev. The issue is the banderas that are in Kiev and have taken power, all the structures of power. So removing one person doesn't necessarily change the conflict. So it may be better for us to go to Kiev. We don't want to go to Kiev, but damn it, we may have to. It is what it is. That may be a lesser outcome as opposed to a deal that presumes the conflict a few years later. So there's that. But there's also this other thing of we don't really want to take Western Ukraine. So if we can get a deal that fulfills all of the obligations of the special military operation, we will do that. Now, that's assuming that you can get that deal. That's assuming you get all of the things that you want in that deal. So from your point of view, we're not giving a squat. We won. If you want to end this conflict, you got to give us something. Full stop. This requires a certain amount of dynamic politics on the side of America to give a face-saving mechanism, or Trump to create a face-saving mechanism, to leave it and say, look, I got peace. I said I was going to get peace. I got peace. Conflict is over with. It's solved for a period of time. There's a new security architecture of Europe, blah, 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 blah. He holds it up, shakes Putin's hand, signs the document. The world is good. Trump gets his photo op. That takes a certain amount of political dexterity, though. And because ultimately, what the US gets is nothing. Now, if it's specific to Ukraine, but of course, there are other things that you can give, like sanction relief, that are not entirely specific to Ukraine. So what Russia wanted in regards to the Black Sea grain deal was, okay, we want to resume this. And we want you to fulfill the obligations of the Black Sea Initiative that the Biden administration wouldn't fulfill. Okay, so that was part of the negotiation that took place for 12 hours in Riyadh. Zelensky is not happy about this because what Zelensky wants is a tightening of sanctions and an increase of sanctions and all this other stuff. What the US is looking at is how do we get rid of these sanctions so we can get the Black Sea Initiative going forward and get goodwill with our Russian partners in order to move forward on some kind of deal to end this war. That's what the US wants. That is not what Ukraine wants, at the very least the government that's in now. So Rubio comes out and gives a speech saying we need to look at the sanctions for Russia. Problem, that is not entirely within the United States power. That is a European issue. So when they say we're looking into it, what they mean is we are going to pressure Europe to get rid of these sanctions, something that Europe does not want to do. Russia, for its part, is like, we are not doing squat. We don't believe you. We think all of you are liars. We are not moving 1 inch on anything until this is done. We want our agricultural, at the very least, one of the banks to turn back on. We want our products to be able to go through the Black Sea. We want sanction relief, effectively. How is the Trump administration going to get this? Yes, they will push for it, but how are they going to get it? That's the fascinating part. One of the things that Russia pointed out was, look, when we allowed this the first time around, you were sending weapons. With these grain shipments, basically you ship the grain, then you bring the weapons back. Also, the grain didn't go to Africa and the global south in the way that we thought. You sent that grain to feed Spanish pigs. That was not part of the deal. And so from the Russian point of view, we want the initiative fulfilled. Full stop. Full stop. And we may want a few extra sanctions removed in the process. If you really want to end this war, you will go and do that. In which case, the Trump administration apparently said, okay, we'll go and try to do that. From Russia's point, we're not moving one iota on anything until you actually do that. Now, Ukraine doesn't like this. And from their point of view, they've been doing any and everything in their power to destroy any notion of negotiations or peace deal, despite the fact that they're losing the war. So a rational actor in this would be like, we're losing more and more territory, more people are being killed. Maybe we need to come to some kind of terms while we have a military on the ground and while we have some level of capability at our disposal, as opposed to mobilizing children in order to fight the war. Maybe we should do that. That is not what this Nazi regime is doing. They're upping the ante and going after Belgorod region, because they're losing Kursk. So their thought is we need to get a hold of Russian territory. So in any negotiations, we can have some kind of Russian territory to negotiate with. Okay, well, this is a non-starter. Full stop, non-starter. Europe, the screws need to be put to Europe. Trump needs to break Europe. He needs to hurt them. And I don't mean this brutally. I don't mean this negatively. I just mean that they are standing in the way of a process to end the war. And maybe you'll get European states that defect. I mean, right now it seems to be France and UK that are the ones that are running the show on this. Maloney has come out and said, I'm not involved in this. You're on Europe. So Italy, what, the third biggest country or the third power in Europe, we're out. Hungary, Slovakia, we're out. Now the catch becomes, does other countries come to the conclusion the US is pushing for this? Why are we continuing to give them bad money, good money after bad? Meaning, are you going to get more defections with the fact that the Trump administration has made it clear this is the direction we're going? I don't care what Joe Biden did. Joe Biden's war, he's lost. This is the direction we're going. In which case, more European states may say, fair enough. We want Russian energy. We want Russian grain. We want to make deals and associations with the Russians. This has not been to the betterment for our economies. So I know everything we said. We're finished. This is fascinating because there's a breakdown in the transatlantic relationship between the United States and Europe. It is fundamentally a different perspective. And the catch becomes, will Trump be able to bend Europe into shape in the way he's been able to bend his own party into form? Zelensky is a rogue element. Zelensky is a rogue element, which brings me to my last point. How do you deal with it? How do you deal with it? Now, Putin and the Kremlin has already said Zelensky is illegitimate. We're not negotiating with him. And even in the talks in Riyadh, they were bilateral, which is fascinating by itself. If Russia and Ukraine is in a war, how is the US and Russia having bilateral talks with Ukraine sitting with his thumb in his ass in the other room eating pizza? How are they doing that if it's, again, the war between Russia and Ukraine? Well, Michael Rubio said the quiet part out loud. It's a proxy war, something that we've been saying for the last 3 years and something we've been called Russian stooges for saying it. Marco Rubio has said the quiet part out loud. It's a proxy war between the US and Russia. So any talks and bilateral relations need to take place between the US and Russia. Ukraine will be dictated to after the fact, in which case they did. Had talks. They were well beyond what Ukraine wanted. They go and have a conversation with Ukraine after the fact to explain what the 12-hour talks were about. And I think they spent an hour or so doing so. I think 70 minutes total. But Zelensky is a problem because he is running around trying to get Europe on his side, trying to get more weapons, get more money, trying to get the Europeans to say, sure, we'll put in a peacekeeping force. Sure, we'll give you $1 trillion. Sure, we'll do all the stuff that we have no capacity to actually do. When Starmer was sitting in the White House and he was giving this, innuendo about the US being on the side of Britain and being with the UK and Europe and all this other stuff, Trump turns, you can beat the Russians, right, Starmer? And everybody in the room laughs, which is humiliating, right? He's pointing out, you do not have the military capability to back up this strongman stance that you seem to be taking around the world. And while you're sitting right here at the White House, you're literally sitting here begging me to go to war with Russia on your behalf. Why does Europe continually start catastrophic world wars. And why are they trying to do it? Once again, I had a conversation with my ex, and on some level, I began to understand why Europe ends up in these stupid wars. The way they think is absurd. And in this very specific case, Trump is trying to put out the stormer. You don't have the swords, to turn a phrase, to back up your mouth. And swords in this case meaning you don't have the military to back up your mouth. In fact, the military is degrading in the UK as we speak. Every word that I say, a chunk falls off of a submarine in the UK military. So in order to deal with Zelensky, Putin has said, we are not dealing with this. He was in a recent speech speaking of submarines on the launch of a new submarine. And as he was in the speech, he pointed out what we could do as an option is to have the United Nations take over governance of Ukraine as they hold elections. So effectively to have an interim government in Ukraine while the Ukrainian system works out an election to take place, a fair election. There was even mention of UN peacekeepers with the bringing in of BRICS, not just, or for that matter, not Europe, but somebody that ostensibly is neutral in the conflict. From my understanding, China said, no, we're not sending troops into Ukraine. This is a non-starter, but whatever. He's trying to come up with solutions to deal with the fact that the government that is in Ukraine now will not be signing a document because the US nor Russia trusts that government. He also made the point that because the government is illegitimate, the next person who takes power can be like, we're not attending to this. We're done. In which case it becomes another Minsk, which Russia has said we are never going to do again. So the UN idea would be apparently for the UN to send peacekeepers into Ukraine and to hold elections, ideally fair elections, to try to get Ukraine back onto some kind of legitimate path, as opposed to the overthrow that took place in 2014 that took it down the path that it is now. A lot is going on, a lot of movement. And I know a lot of people come on the show and they would say, well, we don't think Trump is serious about this. And by the way, part of the reason they're saying it is, well, Ukraine is continuously violating the ceasefire that they did come up with for 30 days. So if they can't attend to a ceasefire in 30 days, what does it look like long term? And if we, Russia, are going to stick with the deal that we made for that 30-day ceasefire not to hit energy systems. Now, mind you, we don't know if they were going to hit energy systems. For all we know, it would have been 45 days when they hit energy systems, in which case this deal is a nothing burger, right? But it is supposed to, on some level, restrain Ukraine from doing it and restrain Russia from doing it within the time frame. And Ukraine has been hitting energy systems pretty much every other day, almost as a rebuke of the fact that negotiations are taking place. That is mind-blowing. And I would imagine that Russia is pointing out to Trump, hey, they just did it again. Here's the such station that they hit. Okay, here's this other place that they hit. Here's this other place that they hit. What are you doing about it? You said we had a ceasefire. You claim you had a ceasefire. You want to negotiate a deal with us, but you're not doing anything about the fact that they're hitting their energy systems. We are attending to the deal. They are not. I would well imagine that that conversation is taking place behind the scenes, or at the very least will take place at some point, and probably did take place at the 12-hour meeting in Riyadh. Now, what does it come to? I don't know. What does it mean? I have no idea. Negotiations seem to be proceeding between the US and Ukraine, with Zelensky as a rogue element doing any and everything in his power to undercut those negotiations, which is, again, very weird. I mean, Ukraine has been a proxy of the United States, and yet this proxy has gone rogue and is doing any and everything in its power to keep a war going that it is fundamentally, and even by Western standards, lost. It's bizarre. Send more men into the meat grinder. Send more people into the wood chipper. Hey, you're 18. You're old enough to vote. Go into the wood chipper also. We'll give you a bunch of money if you go and fight in Ukraine, knowing full well that that money would never be paid because those people are most likely going to die within the first few days. It is astonishing and it is outrageous. A lot of political movement is taking place. At some point, we will see what this political movement comes to. But to call it fascinating is an understatement. Complete understatement. I want to go to my guest, though. We are joined with Andre, there we are, Telizhenko. He is a Ukrainian whistleblower. There we are, Ukrainian whistleblower and former diplomat. Andre, welcome to the show, man. How you doing today?
Good morning, Jamal. I'm doing fine. How are you? How are you doing?
I am doing great, better that you are with me. Um, I brought you on because I wanted to dig into the Maidan, but I have to get into the negotiations that are taking place. 12-hour negotiations that went on. Apparently, the US delegation explained to the Ukrainian delegation what the negotiations were about. Zelensky didn't like the fact that the negotiations were talking about sanction relief in regard to the Black Sea. And he didn't like the fact that the US seems to be on board for that sanction relief um, that they are pushing Europe into, because this is a European thing. Europe is going to have to do this. But the Trump administration obviously has a huge amount of power and influence, or at the very least, they think they do, in which case they are working in order to get the sanctions removed. I suspect a lot of this has to do with showing the Russians, hey, we can be a trustworthy actor the way that the Biden administration wasn't. We said we are going to try to get these removed. We got them removed. All right, let's take the next step for some kind of deal to end the conflict. One of the things, though, that is a lagging element in this is Zelensky. He is a problem to any level of negotiations that take place. He's a rogue element, from my point of view. And apparently to the Russian and the Trump administration's point of view, considering Trump was looking for other people to take over, and considering that Putin just came out in a speech and said maybe a UN peacekeeping force, or let's say the UN should take control of Ukraine in regards to holding new and fair elections, which brought a question to my mind. How does that work? So, do you have to remove the current government in order for peacekeeping force, or for that matter, for an interim government to take over where the United Nations exerts external influence over Ukraine for them to have elections? And can elections be fair in Ukraine? Like, meaning, can Ukraine have fair elections? How would the, and maybe you're not the person to ask this, so fair enough, but I'm curious on your take. How would this work in practice? Wouldn't you have to remove the current government that is in power now if you're talking about putting in a UN-led government into play?
I've been talking about this for over a year and a half. That the last 6 months very actively on what the Russia should push was in the negotiation process to have a neutral government in Ukraine, because that is the key to solving this problem. Zelensky, by the constitution, is not a legitimate president. By Article 110, he cannot prolong his actions, his authority, and his place of them, his actions, because basically wherever he signed, starting from May 20th last year, where his term ended, everything is not legitimate with the appointings and whatever. So the parliament of Ukraine today is a legitimate body. The speaker of the parliament is basically actively the acting president of Ukraine. Plus, we are a parliamentary. Ukraine is a parliamentary presidential republic. The problem is that everybody took Zelensky as a dictator, and that's what he became. And now he's basically ruling the country, keeping everybody in Ukraine as hostages. He's not letting all the men out, so basically it's a hostage situation where he's trading with the United States and whoever he's negotiating with the people who's keeping hostages. So basically, he's a terrorist, not just by his actions, what he's doing on hitting the civil buildings in Russian territory or in eastern Ukraine, what he did when he became president during the Civil War, and continuing to do this today. So he is a problem. First, that's one thing, and that's for sure. Anybody in Ukraine, from my point of view, even though I did speak out about the idea that there was a Timoshenko being running around, what would the situation be like with her? That she did have a possible phone call with Putin, etc. I do not support any of people who are in Ukraine. I do not trust them, because if you are in Ukraine today and you're not in prison, or you're not beaten up, or you're not
Dead.
terrorized every day, or
Yeah.
dead, yeah, that's the worst case scenario, then there's a problem. Then I think you have some strings attached to you with the deep state, the globalists, the neocons, the warmongers, etc. Timoshenko, she is more neutral. I put my expertise on that when I was asked by Mr. Sanchez and his interview, etc. So
Wait,
I
wait,
do
wait,
not,
real quick.
because people started
Timoshenko
to, yeah.
she is the chocolate princess, correct?
No, Poroshenko is a chocolate prince. She is the gas princess.
Okay, gas prince. So you're saying that
Yeah.
she is more neutral.
No, she's not more neutral. She is more likely to neutral because she used to deal with Russia more often in these
Okay.
situations with gas dealings in Ukraine. And I said, and this is my expertise point of view. I do not support her if I talk about her because people
Right.
started writing that, oh, if you're talking about her, then you are supporting. I said, no, I worked for her for 2 years. I know who she is. That was more than 10 years ago. I know her team. But it doesn't mean that if I talk to her and explain who she is, I support her. It's just what is floating around right now as an idea. And one of the ideas that may be possible for government change in Ukraine, legal government change, and leading to a possibility of having neutral elections with everybody involved in this process without having Nazis on the ground. This is what I'm for. If Timoshenko will be that case, and on her basically prime or the last her nuances of her political career, because it is coming to an end sooner or later. She will bring peace to Ukraine and sign peace deals. Let it be her, and she'll have fair elections where everybody's going to get involved. Real opposition who wanted peace for all these years. I don't care if she agrees on that, and that would be the case. Let it be her. The United States and Russia will be agreed upon in this situation. I don't care if she will do her thing, not scam everybody over. Let it be her, but I don't trust her again. So there's a situation here that Ukraine has nobody to put into place that actually will be able to satisfy all sides. And this is leading to your questions about the United Nations and the announcement of President Putin about the situation. He said that this is one of the cases with the United Nations. There may be others,
Right.
examples that he doesn't want to talk about publicly. But as I said, there's nobody else to trust in Ukraine. And if both sides won't agree on, for example, Timoshenko, or she will not be manageable, or she will not be have the strength to pull this off, because the problem with her is it's easier with her to appoint her because she's a member of parliament, appoint her a speaker, and then she can do this process over. But again, this is when Zelensky will not be in power. Zelensky officially is not in power, right? He's not the president legally by the constitution, but physically he is not there already. We're talking about a case scenario already is being discussed where Zelensky, the dictator, the illegal dictator, is not in power, or it's Timoshenko, or it's the United Nations. So when they come in, they act as an acting government at that point, and they basically coordinate and organize. And this can happen both with Timoshenko also, or somebody will be agreed upon on both sides, or separately by the United Nations will coordinate this as a process, as a world order coming in to Ukraine and basically putting a government into place which is agreed upon by both sides. It
Right.
doesn't have to be only foreigners, and we're not talking about the Americans that are going to come in and rule Ukraine or whatever. It's going to be, it may be Americans, maybe Russians, and maybe Chinese, and maybe.
The Chinese said no. Chinese were
No,
like, we're not doing
no. This is the peacekeeping.
that.
This is I'm talking about. China said no to the peacekeeping operations. We're
Right.
talking about a management, a government, agreed upon by the United Nations, which are the Security Council of the United Nations countries that are involved in that. They're the ones who can be participating in a neutral government who come in, clear out the stage from all those Nazism that will be after Zelensky. When he's gone, he's fed, he's in prison, or whatever's going to happen to him.
Yeah.
And they will be leading the election process for all open borders for Ukrainians so they can come in, go back and forth. If they want to flee, they'll flee. If they want to come back and vote, they'll vote. For all Ukrainians, not only who are in the West, 6.5 million, but also to the 1.5 million who are in Russia officially after the special operations started in Ukraine by the Russian Federation. So they will all come in, be able to vote. All opposition parties will be able to vote, to be participating in these elections, presidential elections. They'll be all the TV channels will be open for that. So this is what we're talking about: a possibility that would lead to some stability in that region, which is a good thing, right? And now we're seeing one side, Zelensky, say, "Oh, I don't want this to happen. I don't want sanctions to be lifted. I don't want this. I want this war to continue. I'm going to hit more gas pipelines and energy infrastructure." because he wants to stay in power. He does not represent the people of Ukraine. He represents himself. He's taking hostages, Ukrainians, what we talked about. He's keeping them as hostages and negotiating with them, but he doesn't care about them. He's ready to sacrifice all those, whatever, 15, 20 million that is left in Ukraine out of the 42 that was there. 42 million Ukraine had before when when this whole thing started. Now it's 15, 20 million Ukrainians left there. He's ready to sacrifice and kill them all if he's needed to stay in power. If it's going to keep him as long as that's the problem. Nobody should take him seriously. He should be left out of Ukraine, kicked out by Russia, United States, by everybody. But no, they're keeping him. The globalists are keeping him. The neocons are keeping him.
Andre, I'm sorry to interrupt. Doesn't that include?
Yeah, sorry, I a long monologue.
You're perfectly fine. No, you're perfectly fine. And everything you said, I agree with, right? The only issue, doesn't that require military force? Because I don't think for a moment that Ukraine is going to be like, all right, the UN Security Council signed a resolution that said a peacekeeping force is going to come in. We're going to have an interim government. And they say, okay, we'll leave. Like, I don't get the okay, we'll leave part, right? I don't buy that.
The problem, yeah, the neo-Nazis will leave as soon as the United States will cut the financing for the Central Intelligence Agency and all the other NSA and whatever agencies they have on the ground in Ukraine. They will basically, the coordinators of the neo-Nazis will fall apart. They will flee Ukraine.
Real quick, but Trump controls the CIA at this point. He puts this guy in, Ratcliffe.
Yeah.
Why would neo-Nazis still be there, paid for by the U.S. if the DG wants to?
That is my question. That is why that's why I was pushing about this wholesale thing. So if these negotiations are happening between Russia, United States, and Ukraine is a part of those negotiations, it's not the whole thing. The negotiations are being talked about mostly about Russian-U.S. relations. Ukraine is basically a side dish in the situation. But when you're talking about the side dish, you should understand even for Trump to understand that it's going to be much easier for him if he will leave all the intel groups out of Ukraine, all the advisors, foreign military advisors that are in Ukraine, working with the military intelligence, the CIA, whatever. He controls everything. Executive order, sign it to leave, whatever. If he's even an executive order, he could get a private secret order that they all leave. He should do that. It's going to be easier for him because they will not sabotage his peace negotiations. Does he understand that? I do hope so. Does he have a team that? No, but I believe in this situation, he wants to make things work, and he wants to get out of Ukraine. For the United States, it's a pit, money pit that it's not going to get anything. They can make more money out of negotiating with Russia together throughout the whole world, the Arctic routes, Asia, Middle East. Now they're talking with the whole world, how they're going to work everywhere. They're going to make trillions of dollars there. Ukraine, couple of $1 billion. That's what the Biden administration was making for their pocket money and the multi-industrial complex on this war. That's what they were doing this war and continuing this war just for a couple of $1 billion. We're talking about trillions of dollars. So Trump understands that. He wants to leave Ukraine. He wants to leave Ukraine with his face safe. But there's people around his team that are still neocons or warmongers. I named a couple of names before. I don't want to continue naming them. I'm already people know who they are. We're seeing how everybody's acting, but I don't trust some people on his team that are still continuing to feed him maybe different stories and different situations. Maybe they're in good terms, maybe they're bad terms, but whatever. He wants peace, and that's good, and that's understandable, and that's everybody understands, and it will lead to that. And so he needs to get these CIA out of Ukraine. The neo-Nazis will fall apart. So basically, we're talking about the United Nations government, and with the United Nations government, they're going to be a United Nations peacekeeping operation. It's different from what the Europeans and NATO are proposing. The Europeans and NATO don't have the international authority for peacekeeping operations on the ground, on different grounds. It has to be agreed upon by all sides. If that's the case here, it's not agreed upon on all sides. So the United Nations is the neutral government and neutral peacekeeping situation here. So the military will be from the United Nations that will come in. They will not fight. They'll just be there to keep the safety on the streets, keep the safety for the new government, have the neo-Nazis, if they needed to be caught and whatever, the United Nations is going to take care of it, and they're going to they have all the records, who's involved and where, so they know where to look. So this is one of the scenarios is looking for Kiev right now to get it back, to get Ukraine back on a peaceful track, and hopefully there's going to be a government that will be and I hope there will be a government that will be in a good relationship with the Russian Federation, with Belarus, with Hungary, with Slovakia, with Asia, with the United States, everybody, and not going to just say we want money. And somebody that's going to come in and be a statesman and work for the country. So that's what we're looking for, and that's what Russia is looking also to have, because it's on their border. It's
Mhm.
obvious they want some stability. They don't want a Somalia on their border. That's what they were. That's why this special operation started, because there was a total disregard to national security interests of countries around Ukraine, and one of them was Russia, which is a nuclear country. It's obvious. If you have those situations at the border of the United States, you'd have the United States bombing the hell out of whatever country they're going to be rioting against it. So that's the problem here, and nobody wants to understand that. If it was the United States, the Time magazine would write different articles saying this is for the democracy, we're fighting for freedom, whatever, and that's like Braveheart and all that kind of PR nonsense. But here it's Russia, so it's the bad Russian bear. For
Yeah.
Mother Russia, it's bad, it's mafia or whatever. It's like it's the picture of PR, the picture for all the people, and people buy it. That's the problem. But we want peace. We want something good to happen in this region, and we want the stability to start and get rid of the Nazis that are in Ukraine, headed by Zelensky, who's only making money for himself. And as I said, there's RICO cases happening right now. Maybe will be open in the United States against Zelensky and his team. Not only him, but people involved from the former Biden administration who are money laundering U.S. taxpayer dollars from Ukraine, United Arab Emirates, European banks, American banks, and into their pockets. So that is
Wait,
what is going to happen
how
next.
do you know that? How do you know that there are RICO cases being? Look, I wouldn't be shocked by it, but how do you know that there are RICO cases being opened
No,
against?
there are people who are fleeing from the Zelensky team or trying to save their. I don't want to say what they're going to save, but save themselves.
I'm
Okay,
trying to say
let's
their
keep it.
ass. Yeah, you can say
Yes,
it.
yes. I don't know whether because I don't YouTube all these politics. They're gonna.
You're
I don't
perfectly
want
fine.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah, so sue
we
their
can
ass, and
follow.
basically, they're giving out information to the new administration, and that is what they're doing. So this is on Zelensky, and there's a lot of stuff that the United States knows for himself what happened, but there's a lot of stuff that is coming in there, and what they're going to be maybe make some stuff happen on Zelensky and his team. So he has no way out, nowhere to run. He has nowhere to go. He's politically done. Now it's just the timing when it's going to happen. He's like a Hitler in 1945 in February 1945 in his bunker, thinking he's going to win, but it's already done. The Red Army is in Berlin. It's finished. So the same thing here. It's just the matter of time. And Russia could have taken over Ukraine. They didn't because, first of all, it's a lot of bodies, a lot of destruction. Nobody wants that to happen. Kiev is sought as the Russian. It's a Russian city. It was in all the documents from 1,000 years ago. Documents. It's called Russian. Russian Ruski Horod. That's what it is. It's the mother of the Jerusalem of the Orthodox Church is Kiev, and that's where all the Orthodox Christianity came from Kiev into all over the world, into Russia and whatever. So for our Orthodoxy, our Christian Orthodoxy, so it's a sacred city. Nobody wants to destroy it. So that's why there's negotiations happening for a peaceful transition. But that's what Russia never wanted this war. They wanted peaceful transition at the beginning. But the United States, the Biden administration, pulled Ukraine into this war to make money, to destroy Russia, and they failed.
I just want to nail this down. There was issues with my mic apparently. I don't know why my gain was turned up to high. You were saying that there are RICO cases against Zelensky and some of his cohorts, and that the people who are fleeing are effectively trying to avoid prosecutions that are expected to take place. You're not the only person I heard say this. Arestovich made the same point, saying Zelensky is going to end up in a jail cell for everything that is effectively taking place now. Also, it is not an anomaly for a Ukrainian leader to end up in jail. Zelensky has been trying to put Zelensky in jail, saying if he runs, he's going to put him in a cage. And from my understanding, there were other Ukrainian leaders that were also arrested. So that wouldn't necessarily be shocking. I just haven't heard anything about it up to this point.
Yeah, look, what Zelensky did with Zelensky and the situation, Zelensky is a puppet of the West. Zelensky wanted him in jail. He would be in jail and he would not talk. But he was saved by the West, sent as the ambassador. even though he was general, an active general who destroyed half of the Ukrainian army while he was the general, knowing that it's going to be done, it's going to be destroyed, knowing that they knew what the Russian forces are. Maybe the soldiers on the ground were propaganda, but Zelensky knew what they're going to face. They're going to be destroyed. And he still announced, being the head of the Chief Joint Armed Forces of the Ukrainian Army, announced that he wants to roll his tank throughout Moscow, right before, a couple of months before the war started, when there were peace negotiations happening before the war started with Russia, Ukraine, and the United States. So this is what Ukraine was about. That's not just my propaganda saying Ukraine was involved. No, there were announcements by the high government officials like Zelensky. He's involved in this war fully. He made those announcements. He destroyed half of the Ukrainian men who he sent to die. He knew they're going to die. Now he's sitting out in London, saying, "I'm going to run for president. I'm so patriotic, etc., etc." Now we cannot go against Russia. We cannot fight Russia. We don't have the power. His brother, who's also a military guy, he's now also working for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. He's a diplomat. They all saved their asses. I'm going to say that now because I don't know how to say it. So, that is the problem. These people are hypocrites. They destroyed their own country, who they say they should love, and at the same time they say, we vote for us and we're going to be the next leader. The same thing with like Aristovich, people who finance him. But that's another thing. Dubinsky, like we're talking about, there's people like Dubinsky in prison, allegedly in prison, but they're giving out tweets, they're giving out interviews, 40-minute interviews from the cell in court. And there's more than 15,000 political prisoners in Ukraine. One of them, the famous person, Gonzalo Lira, who was a U.S. citizen, who got killed in the jail cell in Ukraine. There's political prisoners who are being talked about in the United Nations. They don't have a word. They cannot speak out from a jail cell or from a courtroom. Why this guy comes there in a suit? I was in court room when Timoshenko was being jailed in for with Andre Telizhenko, and I knew when she tried to speak out, they'll clear out the whole press with force out of the room, and there would be no problem. There was a different situation, and it was more democratic then. But here we have a total dictatorship. This guy would be dead if he would speak out. But the problem is, with Dubinsky, sorry, I'm going to finish and then I'm going to let you talk. Sorry. With Dubinsky, he ratted out his former boss, Kolomoisky, to the FBI, and that is why he has protection. And his support, he's the same guy with Zelensky, he's the same page. Dubinsky was the right-hand man to Kolomoisky, and he worked for him very closely. I know Dubinsky pretty well also. He ratted him out. That's why he has protection. That's why he's the puppet of the West. He's trying to make Nelson Mandela out of him. But the problem is so many people died in Ukraine, and they're trying to make people fools again. It's nonsense. This is just what the globalists are doing. This is what these corrupt oligarchs are doing, what Zelensky is doing. They don't care about what the people think. They will just want to put a PR picture, sell it to the West, and through the West, bring it to the Ukrainians. That's what Dubinsky's project is about.
In full transparency, I've tried to get an interview with Dubinsky. There was communications over Twitter. As you point out, it's very weird that he's in a prison cell and yet he can give all these interviews and everything else. I'm trying to get an interview with him. I will bring up some of these points. If I do, at this point, there's been no response as a back and forth. I want to get your take on something before I let you go. Donald Trump is coming up with a new grain deal. And this new grain deal is effectively rape. The U.S. wants all minerals forever. This is Lord Bebo. The details of the rare earth agreement, which is proposed to be signed, explained right here. The U.S. is talking about all minerals and rare earths. This is oil, gas, potentially new discoveries, and existing across the entire territory of Ukraine or whatever's left of it. Rights of production for both state and private companies. Revenue is converted directly into currency. The fund's money is transferred to a bank abroad. If something gets lost or stolen, Ukraine has to compensate for it. The fund is managed by 5 people, 3 of them from the United States with full veto power. The U.S. does not contribute anything to this because it has already provided the $300 billion contribution, as Donald Trump talks about it. The agreement is valid indefinitely, changes only with permissions of Americans. And the U.S. has first night rights to new infrastructure projects and the right to veto the sale and resources to other countries. And just to be clear, nothing in this has anything to do with security guarantees for Ukraine. The deal in itself is a security guarantee for Ukraine because the US is going to own all of it. We have about 1 minute. What time is it? Yeah, we have 2 minutes. This is rape.
I can tell you, I have
Go
a
for it.
point of view on this. Sorry, again, I'm talking too much today.
No. I asked you the question. I intruded the moment I asked the question. Give me your take on this. We have about 2
And
minutes.
I've been thinking about this. It's very interesting. I've been talking to people, and from my point of view, from what I acknowledged in this situation, I think it's pretty smart. It's a win-win situation for America. What they're doing is they're proposing a kill deal for Ukraine, basically. At the same time, Ukraine to this Ukraine's government today, which legal or illegal, whatever it is, but the people who can actually take charge in Ukraine, like Timoshenko or other politicians, basically Trump wants peace. Trump doesn't want Ukraine. There's nothing to gain out of it. Even if they take everything, there's still it's not what they can make out of the whole world together with Russia. So it's a win-win deal for Trump. But why? If Ukraine signs it, he wins. He gets whatever he wants from for getting invested into Ukraine by the U.S. government because it was taxpayer dollars. He gets it back to the United States. Or if Ukraine is smart, but it's not smart because it's under globalists and everybody who's appointed that they're clowns and that politicians are not statesmen, not even politicians, but statesmen. If it would be smart and there'd be a statesman in the government who would come to Russia and say, we have this bad deal by the United States. Your guys are negotiating right now, right? And we need to negotiate. We need to negotiate. So Trump wants to put Ukraine on a negotiating table with Russia. Because with Russia, it would be easier to negotiate for the United States to get something out of Ukraine, or together with Russia investments, trillions of dollars will be made. So by this deal, he's pushing Ukraine. Please negotiate with your so-called rival, if you call him rival. It's not a rival. We were one country 30 years ago, and we still are one people. There's a lot of families in divided. So go negotiate because you have a shitty deal here. Make a deal with Russia, and they will make a deal with us, and we will have a win-win situation. We will have peace then. So this is what it is about. That's my analysis on the situation.
I appreciate that point of view. I think that ignores the Donald Trump is trying to get any and everything that he can out of it. Ukraine is not going to negotiate Russia under these terms. In fact, I'll go further and I have to let you go because my next guest is here. But if you remember, it was the trade deal that became the impetus for the overthrow of Ukraine in the first place. The EU wanted a deal. The deal was crappy. Russia had a better deal. They wanted Yanukovych to accept that deal. Yanukovych said, I'll give it a pause. And then you get Victoria Nuland on the phone effectively saying, we're going to overthrow the government. I appreciate that point of view. I disagree with that, but I appreciate it. My man.
We can have a bottle of wine on that.
But we'll see, right? The wine is on me. If indeed Ukraine goes to Russia and says, hey, let's make a deal, because this deal sucks. I don't think that's going to happen, but we will see.
This administration will never happen, but maybe the new one will do it. So
Fair enough. Andre Telizhenko, he's a Ukrainian whistleblower, a former diplomat, and a good friend of this show. My man, thank you for this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jamal. God bless.
You too. Bye-bye. All right. Let's go to my next guest. We are joined with easily one of my favorite people to talk to, John Kiriakou. John Kiriakou, he is a former CIA officer. And John, what show are you on now? Because you've been going around doing speeches, which is utterly fantastic. I'm so happy that you got the opportunity. You are easily one of the most fascinating people to listen to.
Thank you.
Where can people find either your show or where can people find your events?
Well, thanks for that. I'm going to give you 4 different answers. I've got podcasts on YouTube, one with Michelle Whitty and Ted Rawl called Deprogram. I have another one. It's an interview show just by myself called Deep Focus. Those are both on YouTube. I've got a TV show on the Unified Television platform. It's unifyd.tv. And that's called CIA Declassified. We use original CIA documents to prove or disprove allegations from big world events. And my speaking tour, I'm headed back to the UK for another 2 weeks of dates, starting on May the 3rd in Glasgow and then finishing in London on May, I think it's the 17th. And that's all at tigerslanestudios.com.
You are a busy man.
It's busy.
You are a busy man.
Busy is good. Busy is
Yeah,
good.
busy is good. I agree with you. To start with something else, I want you on to have a conversation with the Waltz thing, but this broke this morning. At the very least, I saw it this morning. So you remember Donald Trump sends a letter behind the scenes to Iran,
Yes.
and he tells Iran, "Hey, in 2 months, all hell's going to break loose." I'm paraphrasing. All hell's going to break loose if you don't come to the table and have a deal with me on the issue of the JCPOA, basically a new JCPOA. This is a bit rich since it was Trump that pulled out of the JCPOA in the first place, but put that to the side for the moment. He is effectively threatening ostensibly military action if they don't come to the bargaining table. Now, Iran has said this is nonsense. The notion that you even put this out here is insane. We're not going to negotiate with you under threat. From my understanding, Pezeshkian, and I even had the speech of him wanting to negotiate with the United States, but effectively saying, look, I would align my position with the Ayatollah. He is the one in charge. So fair enough. We don't need to do negotiations. Fast forward to today, where apparently it is being reported that a letter was sent back to the US from Iran saying, well, they're not really telling you what's in the letter, but the reporting is that Iran is willing to negotiate behind the scenes in a de facto sense. My question to you, considering you wrote the book on Iran, and so, what is it? I will find the name for it. In fact, I think I have the name for it right here.
Yeah, the
It
CIA
is
Insider's Guide to the Iran Crisis.
the CIA Insider's Guide to the Iran Crisis. Right, I have it right here. So, what do you think this conversation is about? I find this to be maddening to me. Iran wants to negotiate. It's like saying, I have a blue car. You want to buy a blue car. And then I tell you, if you don't buy this blue car, I'm going to punch you in the face. And it's like, dude, I already want the blue car. Why are you threatening me? And I can't buy the blue car from you if you're threatening me to punch me in the face. It's like a deal is on the table to be made. There are elements of the Iranian government that wants to make it, but Trump wants to take this from a position of strength in any negotiation as opposed to just making a negotiation with something that Iran wants to negotiate. What do you think is in that letter back to Trump that is being sent through a third party? And the second question, I'll piggyback. If Iran is saying we won't negotiate under threat, third party negotiation is still negotiation.
Yes, true. I think that the letter coming back to Iran through the Omanis, not through the Emiratis, who received or who delivered rather our letter to the Iranians decided to answer through the Omanis, who historically have been the middleman for us with Iran. I think the letter tells Trump to screw himself. The Iranians, listen, this is a vastly different time than it was 8 years ago. When Donald Trump first became president and pulled out of the JCPOA, Iran was in a certain way. Well, now the Iranians are far closer to the Russians, far closer to the Chinese, have robust trade relations with most European countries and with the biggest economies in Asia. They don't need the United States. It's a different time. It's a different Iran than it was then. They don't need peace with the United States. Things are good just the way they are for the Iranians. And you know, another thing too is oftentimes we trick ourselves into thinking that the elected president and the Majlis are in charge. They're not in charge. Ayatollah Khamenei is in charge. And if he wants negotiations, they'll take place. If he doesn't want them, they won't take place. It's really as simple as that. Now, I want to add one thing.
Please.
We learned in General McMaster's memoir that came out after Joe Biden was elected president, that in the very beginning of the Trump administration, Donald Trump spoke openly in these internal meetings about using a nuclear weapon against North Korea. McMaster said that he was absolutely appalled that these thoughts were even being vocalized. And McMaster says that he said to Trump, you know what would really throw them is if you tried to engage them in diplomacy. And so that was the start of the so-called love letters. I'm wondering if Trump, declared victory in terms of diplomacy with North Korea, even if it didn't amount to anything in the end. and that he's bullying the Iranians now so that he can then offer a summit, whether with Pezeshkian or Ayatollah Khamenei, which isn't going to happen.
Oh, I bristle at the North Korea thing. I've heard somebody else make that comment that nothing came of it. I so disagree. I mean, the North Koreans were firing missiles into the Sea of Japan. The United States, Japan, and everybody else was freaked out by them doing so. Trump engages them in diplomacy. They stopped doing it. They even blow up, I guess you could say it was optics, but whatever. They even blow up elements of, it's not the nuclear site or whatever, but they blew up something. I don't remember. It's so vague in my mind now. But Trump got them to stop doing that. He shook hands. He stopped doing the military exercises on the sea. South Korea had even started talking about reunification. These were positive developments. When Joe Biden got into office, Joe Biden wiped all of it away.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me why I'm wrong.
No, you're 100% right. Yeah, Joe Biden was the one that did away with it. And Donald Trump, by all accounts, Donald Trump is obsessed with the idea of winning the Nobel Peace Prize. And so on the one hand, maybe that's enough of a motivation to actually reach out, either directly or indirectly, to the Iranians. On the other hand, he made a statement about the Houthis in Yemen just 2 or 3 days ago, in which he said that if we keep bombing the Houthis and they keep attacking either us or shipping, that we're going to bomb Iran. Now, do we really want to do that? Iran is an enormous country with an enormous army, and all of its sensitive facilities, whether military or nuclear, are deep underground. Are we sure we really want to get into something like that? Yet another war in the Persian Gulf?
Now, I've had a military guy on the show that said Trump would hit Iran with nukes. I'm not going to say his name. The audience knows that Trump is going to hit Iran with nukes, that they're going to be tactical nukes, and that it's going to destroy all of their facilities in one go. And as I pointed out to him, military people say stuff like this all the time. It's never true. Yeah. Never true. I remember when John F. Kennedy was having a conversation with Eisenhower, where Kennedy called Eisenhower because they were in the Cuban Missile Crisis. And he says, hey, what do you think? Is Khrushchev bluffing? And Eisenhower was like, yeah, he's bluffing. He's not really going to do it. Khrushchev was not bluffing. He wasn't bluffing. And this idea that, oh, we're going to do a bombing strike and we're going to take out everything is nonsense. I don't buy it, the premise.
No. And how many times are we going to go through something like that, where we had General Schwarzkopf say that we're bombing Iraq back into the Stone Age, and then we ended up barely affecting their military. This kind of thing happens all the time. There are so many people in senior policymaking positions in Washington that just have no understanding of history. They just don't get it. And so they think that they're the first ones to ever say, oh, you know what would really be effective? If we carpet bomb Iran, because there's no way they could bounce back. There's no way they could defend themselves. Well, of course there is. Yeah. And then we're dragged down into another decade-long or 2-decade-long war.
With a country 3 times the size of Iraq. I mean, Richard Nixon, had a secret plan to end the war, and the secret plan was more bombing.
Yeah,
it didn't work.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. That leads me to another. Well, wait a minute. Do I have another question on this one before we move on? So, okay. So, I agree with you, by the way. It's very possible that Trump he has so many hawks in his administration. And the same tactic that he was using with North Korea, same tactic he was using with Russia of, oh, if they don't do this, we're going to have more sanctions or whatever else. That seems to be his playbook. I'm going to escalate to de-escalate. So you don't think Iran would accept Trump coming to Iran, shaking hands, signing a deal, everything's great, in the North Korea style of things?
No, I think if there were to be meetings, it would likely be at the technical level. So Iranian experts and American experts would meet in, let's say, Geneva or Dubai or something like that. I can't imagine Donald Trump would dare step foot in Iran, even if he were invited to do so, because he's so universally hated, so universally reviled for the killing of Qasem Soleimani during his first term. They would want Trump's head in Iran.
Good point. Oh, that's such a good point. That leads me to Yemen. in the most hypocritical, radical hypocrisy that I've ever seen. We are saying, well, the Houthis, because they're bombing ships in the Red Sea in order to push back against genocide, or Ansarallah, whatever you want to call it, we believe that Iran is helping the Houthis. And so if the Houthis keep doing this and we can't stop them, we will hit Iran, as if these things are one-to-one. Now, this is outrageous considering we've been arming Ukraine to the teeth. And we've been arming Israel to the teeth as they committed genocide. So it's a bit rich that we're going to take this point of view, but whatever. The Houthis, from my point of view, Trump is going to look like Joe Biden on this. I think JD Vance is right that what is this going to solve? Like the Houthis have been bombed for the last 10 years by Saudi Arabia when Obama gave the green light for that war, and by Joe Biden himself. Nothing has stopped them from doing what they've been doing. So why do you believe more bombing is going to solve this issue? This brings me to the text messages that came up. I'm fascinated by these text messages. Hegseth is lying through his teeth when he says, oh, this didn't happen. We didn't talk to Goldberg. He wasn't in a meeting, blah, 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 blah. It comes out that Goldberg just releases all of the documents to the text message. One, it's weird that a journalist doesn't release this information right off the bat. He's a journalist. You would think he would do it. And two, all of these people are lying through their teeth. So this is Hegseth after, I believe this was after Goldberg releases all of the documents that he had at his disposal because he was sitting in on the war plans. And let's put war plans in quotes, but he was sitting in on the meeting.
Here to do. Nobody's texting war plans. Well, I noticed this morning out came something that doesn't look like war plans. And as a matter of fact, they even changed the title to attack plans because they know it's not war plans. There's no units, no locations, no routes, no flight paths, no sources, no methods, no classified information. You know who sees war plans? I see them every single day. I looked at them this morning. I looked at attack plans this morning. You know who does attack plans and war plans? Men like that admiral right there, Paparo for the Indo-Pacific, or Eric Kurilla, our general in CENTCOM. They do attack plans and war plans. And thank God we have those leaders who do it and do it well, and our enemies know it. My job here to do.
John, I think what Hegseth is missing here is that he allowed journalists to sit in on a meeting where they are talking about hitting Yemen. And, you know, as he's sitting here in this, like as he's saying this, it doesn't matter if you had the exact details. The fact that a journalist is sitting in on a meeting where he is openly discussing hitting Yemen is rather outrageous. And none of them have really explained how this happened. Give me your take on this. I mean, these are the conversations that Goldberg releases.
Right.
It is wild that the VP, Secretary of Defense, Secretary, I don't know, I think Rubio was on these, I'm not sure.
Yes.
But that all of these high-level people are in this conversation about hitting Yemen. Hegseth even goes further in these chats in this regard. Give me your take on this. This is illegal by definition, right? I mean, the fact that there's
Absolutely, yes. I counted 3 separate violations of the Espionage Act. You know, when I was being prosecuted by the Obama administration back in 2012, the judge in my case came up with a definition of espionage that has become the standard. It is very simple. It is providing national defense information to any person not entitled to receive it. That's exactly what happened in this Signal chat. So first, the fact that they used Signal in and of itself is a violation of the Espionage Act. Because while Signal is encrypted, end-to-end encrypted, it's only encrypted once you hit the send button. It can be intercepted as you're typing it before it's encrypted, right? So violation number 1. Violation number 2 was the fact that that Goldberg was on the chat in the first place. Remember, providing national defense information to any person not entitled to receive it. He's a journalist. He's not entitled to receive it. And number 3, The fact that Hegseth put classified information at the top secret level on Signal was a separate violation. Because even if it weren't intercepted pre-encryption, the information that he gave was top secret, not confidential or secret. Now, there's a difference, an important difference between these classifications. Confidential information, the courts deem as causing harm to the national security. Secret information, the courts deem to cause serious harm to the national security. Top secret information, including all attack plans, cause grave harm to the national security. And when top secret information is revealed or shared with somebody not permitted to see it, the Espionage Act can become a death penalty case. This is a very, very serious crime. Now, with that said, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, yesterday said there would not be an investigation and there would not be a prosecution. Republicans control both the House and the Senate. And the Republicans said yesterday that they will investigate. But you know what, Jamal, even if they do, even if they say, oh, there were separate, multiple violations of the Espionage Act, the Attorney General has already said no one is going to be charged with anything.
John, they put you in a cage for less.
Yeah, they did. They put me in a cage for less, for 2 years.
Outrageous.
Yeah.
And, they're yada yadaing this history. In fact, Bondi did something worse. She invoked Hillary Clinton's email
Yeah.
server. And it's like, oh, we're not going to talk about this. You guys should talk about the email server. It's like, okay, dude, those are two separate issues. Those are two very separate issues. And Clinton got so much crap for that. And, and then they come to this where they're literally putting a journalist on the thing. Now, the other question becomes, okay, well, how did Goldberg even get on the chat? Even that part is there.
Well, that's a great question. Ryan Grimm reported, and I think he hit this right on the head. Ryan Grimm reported that the reason Goldberg got on the chat was because he was in Waltz's phone because Waltz was a longtime source of his. And Waltz just hit the wrong name. Remember, when you're setting up a Signal chat, you can't do it by phone number. You have to do it by name. So the name of the group was PC, which stands for Principals Committee, Small Group, Yemen. So he physically had to go into Signal and create this group and then add people not by number, but by name. And he put Goldberg on.
So effectively, he was a source for Goldberg,
Sure.
a secret source
Oh,
for
yeah.
Goldberg.
Yes.
And in being a secret source, as opposed to him hitting some other name, he hit Goldberg's by accident. He's an old man. He might have had fat fingers.
Yeah.
And Goldberg's name comes up.
Yep.
And Goldberg initially thinks, okay, this is obviously a hoax. This is not who they say they are. But he waits.
Yeah.
And he sees more people come in. He sees more people comment. He sees Hegseth. He sees Rubio or Vance. And he still sits there. And he's like, oh, wait, this is legit. They're actually talking about bombing Yemen. And I am on the meeting as they have this conversation. Vance, I'm growing to like Vance. I'm growing to like Vance. Vance pointed out in the meeting, like, look, why are we doing this? Joe Biden did this. It didn't come to anything. 3% of American shipping goes through the Red Sea. This is a European issue. Why do we care? This is none of our business. But I'll be a good soldier. I'll fall in line with whatever you guys come up with. And their rationale was, we're going to send a message. That's their point in doing the bombing. We're going to send a message. We're going to show that, we're strong or something like that. This is the level of dialogue that takes place behind the scenes among these people with all of this immense power.
Yeah, insulting the Europeans, not even bothering to acknowledge that the fact that they're having a chat, whether it's encrypted or not, is irrelevant, is a violation of the Federal Records Act. Because remember, any executive branch record is subject to a Freedom of Information Act disclosure. But you can't FOIA somebody's Signal chat off their cell phone.
Yeah, but is it? Oh, I see what you mean. But it's still secret, right? I mean,
But
like you wouldn't be able to
it's
FOIA this conversation anyway.
sure you could. Sure you
Really?
could. And then if the court would order its release, it would have to be redacted.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But if there is no written record that such a chat took place, as there normally wouldn't be, how would you even know to FOIA the chat? And what's to stop any of these participants from just deleting it?
What is normal in regards to communications? How would they normally have this back and forth chat?
Oh, through a classified channel like Cybernet, for example, or classified email, which has been around since 1990. The CIA got classified email in 1993, 1992. Yeah,
So the entire point of this was to be able to delete this chat.
I think that was one of the points. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
wow. Just wow.
I would also
I-
add that it is illegal to have a phone, a communications device, in a classified area, whether in a tempested office, like the office of the Secretary of Defense, or in a SCIF, sensitive compartmented information conference room. You can't have a cell phone or a BlackBerry or whatever the heck they were using. That's a separate violation. So we're talking so far 5 felonies, including 3 counts of espionage that were committed during the course of this conversation.
John, that's amazing. And they are yada yadaing this like, oh, it's no big deal. This is a witch hunt. You guys are just after
It's a
us.
very big deal.
This is a very serious violation. That's your point.
It is. Yes, indeed.
Do you think, but you don't think any charges, anything is going to come of this?
Not a chance. Absolutely not. No one. I would be shocked if there are any resignations. Now, if these guys had any real class, both Waltz and Hegseth would resign. This is a major security problem. I said in an interview a couple of days ago, this is the biggest security screw up in a generation. And if these guys had any self-respect, they would resign.
Well, that's not happening.
No,
That's not
not a
happening.
chance.
One last question on the CIA. Trump came in like a bull in a china shop and wanted to settle scores. One of the scores he wanted to settle was with the FBI and the CIA. What changes? And you may not know this, but you may have been reading firings, those type of things that have been taking place. Why they say that he effectively damaged the CIA and what he was doing? What was he doing? What they're saying is damaging the CIA.
No, in fact, if you look just under the surface, he's actually shown great support for the CIA. So I think what his critics are talking about in that respect is that 70 CIA officers have been fired, right? So these are 70 officers who had something, even peripherally, to do with DEI, right?
Mhm.
Inclusion, racial equality, gay rights, whatever. Fired. These are the first CIA layoffs since 1977. When
Are
Jimmy
you
Carter-
serious?
Yeah. The CIA just gets bigger and bigger. It doesn't get smaller. People don't get laid off ever. So not since 1977. But then within 48 hours of firing these 70 officers, he brought back a legendary retired officer to be the deputy director for operations. Guy was a 7-time station chief, and the kind of CIA officer that everybody in a younger generation would want to be like.
Oh, they
So
respect him.
if he meant to damage the CIA or do harm to the CIA, he wouldn't have chosen this guy to be the deputy director for operations. This was an inspired choice if you're a CIA supporter.
I'm sorry, one last question. My last guest made this point about Ukraine. And there's a lot of conversation about getting rid of Zelensky. Zelensky is a rogue element. Russia has recently come out and says, look, we are not having negotiations with that goofball. He is illegitimate. We consider him illegitimate. The Trump administration on some level also is synonymous or let's say there's a synonym associated with this, even if it's not exact, where Trump is like, want somebody else. They've been looking behind the scenes for somebody else to take Zelensky's place. Andre made the point of saying, look, nothing is going to get accomplished with all of these elements on the ground, these neo-Nazi elements on the ground. And he points out they are funded and backed by the CIA. And as I pointed to him, I was like, but Ratcliffe is Donald Trump's guy in the CIA. You would think that if Trump is in charge of the CIA, that these people would necessarily be there giving money and support to these rogue elements. He says, look, I don't know what Donald Trump is doing on this, but if Donald Trump really wants peace, those elements need to be out of that country. And Trump has the power to do it by giving an order to the CIA to pull out all of those rogue elements. Is he right about this? I mean, because Donald Trump is saying that he wants peace. He's pushing hard on this issue. Zelensky is in power. He is intimated that he wants somebody else in power, that Zelensky is a dictator, that he has 4% approval or whatever, and that they want somebody else. Is it true that it's the CIA and its elements on the ground that are effectively paying for and giving support to these banderites that are allowing Zelensky's regime to A, stay in power, and will prevent any election to take place to be legitimate? Is that true? Trump doesn't have control of his own
that's
government.
really, that's seriously overstating the situation.
Okay.
The CIA has been there from the very beginning. It's been providing training and weapons systems and ammunition and logistical support and everything. But there are far fewer actual neo-Nazis than a lot of Russians or people on the American right believe there are. Sure, the president can order the CIA to pull out or to stop cooperating. It's not that big of a deal.
Mhm.
Yeah, I always thought that the number of Nazis or neo-Nazis
Overstated.
was overstated. Yeah, they're there without a doubt, and we should not have anything to do with them, and we do. So that's wrong. And then on the other hand, you can't go to war with a country and say, yeah, I'm willing to have peace talks, but the country that I'm at war with isn't invited or shouldn't be invited to the peace talks. Come on. To say that this has to be between the United States and Russia is to just pretend that Ukraine is a satellite state of the United States. And it's not. It's not. The Ukrainians are going to have a seat at the table because it's their country that we're talking about carving up. Whether the Russians like it or not, there has to be a role for Ukraine.
Oh man, we so disagree. Let me explain why. Do you remember when Joe Biden came on, gave that speech where he says, I told them to fire that prosecutor or else
Yeah.
I'll pull $1 billion?
I played it like 20 times on my show. Yes.
It is an astonishing thing for somebody to admit that they're doing that. But think of how weak a government has to be for a U.S. president to be able to
not
exert.
necessarily. I was walking. I was doing a surveillance detection route on foot once, 25 years ago, with a visiting CIA leader,
Mhm.
and his cell phone rang, and it was the president of a country, I can't say which, saying, "Hey, I'm reshuffling the cabinet. Who should I name as the head of my intelligence service?" And he told her, pick so and so, and she did. That doesn't mean that that country is a satellite state of the United States. That doesn't mean that the country controls that country's, politics or foreign policy or whatever. It means that we're very influential there and that they'll be deferential and check in with us, but we don't control the country. And I see the same situation in Ukraine. We have outsized influence there. But Ukraine is not a satellite state to the point where they shouldn't be invited to the negotiating table to discuss taking away their territory and turning it over to the Russians. Come on.
From my point of view, it's a proxy war. And the proxy, in this case being Ukraine, the actual combatants in this war is the United States and Russia, with the US giving any and everything to Ukraine to fight that war. I get the sense that if the US pulls out, the war stops, Ukraine collapses. And so the negotiation that needs to take place are between Russia and the US. But I don't.
Yeah, but Vietnam was a proxy war between the
Mhm.
United States on one side and Russia and China on the other. Russia and China never participated in any negotiations at the Paris peace talks. It was just the United States and Vietnam.
Good point. Good point. Yeah, good point.
And
I don't know.
if Ukraine is a sovereign country, a member of the United Nations, we can't just pretend that their sovereignty isn't important enough.
But see, I don't believe they're a sovereign country. Like when Zelensky, I give you an example. When Zelensky is considering a peace deal with Russia, and they work out the Istanbul agreements, they have the contours and framework of an agreement. And then the US comes in, or Boris Johnson says, hey, cut it out. Okay, a sovereign country, if it indeed wanted a deal, would have taken the deal. It under no circumstances could, because the Western powers and the US didn't want it to. Meaning
Sure,
it
well,
didn't
that's
have
all that means is that the country is weak. It's a politically weak country. If the international community recognizes it as an independent sovereign nation and it is seated at the United Nations, then it's an independent sovereign nation, whether it's weak or strong or subject to, a bully that lives in the neighborhood. It's still a sovereign country. It's internationally recognized. The Russians recognized it as a sovereign country. They exchanged ambassadors with it.
Mhm. I agree up to the point where they were overthrown in 2014. Like meaning after 2014, that sovereignty was gone. Yes, in name, they're a sovereign country. And yes, they're sitting in the UN as a quote unquote sovereign country. But that sovereignty is in quotes at best, especially now
Well,
where
you say, but who makes that determination when it
no,
comes to
that's
peace
fair.
talks?
That's a fair point. I'm a random guy, right? I'm a random guy. John, thank you for this, man. I really appreciate this. I always
Anytime.
appreciate these conversations. You be
My
safe.
pleasure.
By the way,
Thank you,
again,
sir.
where can people find you? One more time. I do this twice because I want, people to get
Thanks.
it on both ends.
I'm on YouTube under Deprogram, YouTube under Deep Focus with John Kiriakou. Speaking tour is listed at tigerslanestudios.com and Unified Television, UNIFYD.TV. The show is CIA Declassified.
Check John out. Check John out. John, you have a safe day, safe trip, wherever you're
Thank you.
going. Be safe, my
Thank
man.
you.
Thank you for this.
All the best.
You too. All right. John Kiriakou, shout out to John. Always appreciate having a conversation with him. Obviously, I disagree with him on this. Should they be sovereign? Yes. Should they be neutral? Yes. Do I want the best for Ukraine and the people of Ukraine? Absolutely. Yes. Are they a sovereign country from my point of view? No. No. Sovereign country can make their own agreements. Sovereign country can make their own deals. Sovereign country doesn't necessarily need these kind of propaganda exercises that they were involved in their military escapades that got all of these people killed in Kursk, or for that matter, may do the same or something simple in Belgorod. A sovereign country could have come to a deal, but the Istanbul agreements in 2014, like, I don't know, to me, these things cut against this idea of sovereignty. I think John is right. They're sitting in the UN. They look as a sovereign country, but in the de facto sense, I don't buy the premise. I just don't buy it. If the US and Russia are the main, let's say, proponents and the powers in this war, by powers, I mean, we are dumping all of this money and weapons into Ukraine, then it seems like the negotiation between the US and Ukraine, the moment that the US pulls out, the war stops. So you have this rogue element that is not considered legitimate. How could you trust Zelensky in any negotiations, right? And so, no, I don't trust Zelensky in the negotiations. I don't want him anywhere near the negotiating table. I think this is between the US and Russia, and we will solve it as such for Europe. These guys are fully in this mindset of continuing a losing war. I don't want them anywhere near the quote unquote peace process, considering they're going to do everything in their power to destroy that peace process. Just saying. Just saying. We can disagree on it. I love John to death. That doesn't change me from loving John to death. He is one of the most fascinating people to talk to. And this God, man, John is a story for everything. he has been around and has been floating through the CIA for so long, and some of the experiences that he has are just mind blowing. It was a privilege to be able to work with John at the network and to be a part of some of those conversations. It really was. So let's move to the next story. My guest comes at 9 o'clock. And so I want to move to the next story before he gets here. Cenk Uygur. Cenk Uygur. I have been fascinated by this. And I know I use that term a lot, but this has been remarkable. So I can't go into the beginning and end of all this because I'm on the tail end of it. So forgive me for my lack of knowledge about all of it. But the part of it that I do know, or the window that I did have on it, is kind of spot coming in and out of chaos at TYT. From my understanding of this, and I could be wrong, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The chaos for TYT started when the election went belly up for Kamala Harris. And somewhere in all of this, there was this mindset of, we are getting this wrong. The American public doesn't seem to be on board with our liberalism or our version of liberalism. And we keep losing to what is Hitler, fascist, devil incarnate, et cetera, et cetera. How on earth are we losing to this man? And what are we doing wrong that the American public is recoiling, where they would vote for somebody like Donald Trump as opposed to somebody like Harris, or even in this case, Joe Biden? Cenk changes slightly. And he starts to air certain points of view that he thinks are kind of part of the problem with liberals. Trans kids, trans men and women's sports, that type of stuff. Well, you can imagine that nobody likes somebody to lead their team, and liberals, lefties, people call themselves lefties, freak out. And so the Democratic adjacent networks, Sam Cedar, people like this, David Pakmans of the world, they lose their minds and they start attacking Cenk. What's wild about it, Cenk and Anna start going on one show after the next on the right and airing these points of view, which pisses off liberals all over the place. I mean, they lose their mind over this stuff. My computer's frozen. What's going on? What's going on? Okay, I don't know what just happened. I'm frozen. I'm frozen. I'm frozen. Come on, come on, come on. What is happening? What is happening? Come on, come on, come on, come on. All right. There's an error somewhere. I'm trying to fix it. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. In fact, I'll do this. I'm going to, let's pivot for a bit and give me time to fix this. John Stewart has been doing really good work, and I give him credit for it. And he's talking about the electrical vehicle chargers and broadband that Build Back Better was supposed to allow. Ezra Klein comes on the show, and they're having a conversation about what was required to get access to the money for it. This is the conversation that they had, which gets across why nothing got done on that issue by Joe Biden.
They didn't want to just build it, Ezra. They wanted it back better.
Maybe. Oh, wow, man, that's there's something about throwing me back to that moment that hurts at this moment, right? Like the optimism, it was a simpler time.
It was a simpler time. Yeah, but you make the point in the book, which I think is really interesting, that moment of optimism actually crystallized in some ways the failure.
Yes.
And you make it very stark in terms of, for instance, the Chargers, which I think is a great example.
So, right. So liberals passed $7.5 billion for a nationwide network of electric vehicle chargers. We also get $42 billion, and this is a big thing they tout a lot, to do rural broadband. There's a lot of parts of this country that are not hooked up to broadband. And in both cases, and these were passed early in the administration, particularly the rural broadband money, by the end of the administration, by the election, by the time I'm fact-checking the book, they just have not happened. And you look into why, and we did look into why. And what you get are these incredibly baroque internal processes. I'll focus on rural broadband for a minute here, because that one was a good idea.
Still a good idea.
And they liked it. Like, that was the one they went around when they talked about the infrastructure bill. They were like, roads and rural broadband, right? And if you look into what happened, they created, not in the bill, but this is really important. We have this whole little Schoolhouse Rock song about like how bill becomes a law, and it's like sitting on the steps of the
I'm not going to
Congress.
ask you to sing it, Ezra.
Yeah, I've been practicing. I have been practicing. We don't have the song about how the law becomes reality, how the law becomes a series of implementation rules, then a notice of funding opportunity, then there's a comment period, then there's a challenge period for the comments, then there's a series of court cases.
Right.
And so for rural broadband, for instance, what you end up having is a 14-stage process. Like, there's a period where the Commerce Department needs to draw up a map of which parts of the country don't have the right amount of broadband. And then there's a challenge period on the map, and da-da-da-da. And 56 states and jurisdictions try to apply for this money. And again, this passes at the end of 2021. They have time. By the end of 2024, 3 have gotten to the end of the process. They were trying.
Three of these 56.
Yes.
End of the process, meaning they've actioned it, they've built it, or they've
No, of course not. I didn't mean they built it, John. Sorry, I was so good. I confused you.
Oh, dear
They
God.
just got to the point where, in theory, they could get the money to build
They
it.
had been approved for the money.
Yes. Yes, basically.
We're back. We're back. I have no idea what the glitch was. I had to go through my system, my taskbar, in order to fix it. We're back. The world is good. Nobody's coming after me. That clip that you just saw was of John Stewart talking to Ezra Klein about everything that needed to take place and all of the steps for the Build Back Better money that Joe Biden promised. That, we're going to have new broadband. We're going to have new, what was the other thing? It was broadband and something else. Effectively, the states had to go through like 10 steps, I think 7 to 10 steps, in order to get it, which means that nobody was going to get charging stations, was the other one. We're going to have EVs all across the country because we want electrical vehicles. This was this kind of liberal thing that they wanted, despite the fact that there weren't enough. The energy grid couldn't support what they wanted to accomplish. And yet they were still going with this idea of magical thinking of, we're going to have all of these EV stations. Okay, fair enough. Fast forward. None of them were built. All of this money was distributed. The states had to go through all of these steps, and yet nothing was accomplished. If you ask me why Kamala Harris lost, I think it's that. Put everything else to the side for the moment. The fact that she was sticking with Joe Biden, the fact that they were arm in arm, not an inch of daylight, kid, as Joe Biden told Kamala Harris when she went out to have, I believe it was the debate. It's the fact that they get nothing done. I agree with people in the chat that made the point of saying, hey, Donald Trump is not getting anything done. Agreed. He is a very active president, but it's frenetic energy that's not really going anywhere. Yeah, I agree with the negotiations, but from the standpoint of domestically, he's just destroying stuff. Even the tariff war is going to put us at odds with all of these different countries. Now, maybe he's going with this idea of we're going to fight on tariffs in order to get a better deal for America. Okay, whatever. What that will do, though, is damage the economy as he goes about trying to reorganize the world order and pull back on this notion of globalism, considering it's not necessarily helping the United States. Trump to the side for the moment. Any president, especially a Democratic president, is going to be evaluated on what they do. And the reality of it is, if you really ask yourself, what did Joe Biden do? I think you'll be hard pressed to come to an answer. Now, you may have some wonks out there that will say, well, he changed this little degree of so-and-so and so-and-so. Okay, it's not enough. It's not enough. When you had that plan of saying, we're going to give kids money, effectively Social Security for children, you had me applaud. There's sometimes where I think to myself, okay, are you just the Senate? Are you just, against all of them just because you're against all of them? And when Joe Biden passed it, I realized my answer was no. I supported that plan. I thought that plan was fantastic. Because if you accept that children are indeed going to grow up, and how they grow up and what they grow up into is directly related to what they came out of, then ensuring that they are intact as kids, it's not just a good thing. It is something that is vital for your society to function. Full stop. It was good. It was a good plan. It was a good policy. And more to the point, I would wager to you that people who are going to vote were going to vote and say, Joe Biden put hundreds of dollars in my pocket each month or whatever the schedule was. I appreciate that money, and I'm going to vote for him or Kamala Harris in order to make sure that check continues to come. What happens? In 1 year, the Democratic Party got rid of it. Okay, so what do you think about that in that sense? Meaning, if you as a president is being evaluated on what you do and what the public can see you do, and you are a Democratic president, which means the onus is on you to move the country forward in a particular direction because the right wing doesn't really believe that stuff. They're a conservative party, right? And you don't get anything accomplished, then what are people voting on? It seems that the Democratic Party has come to the conclusion, well, people are voting to prevent Republicans from doing XYZ, as opposed to they're voting for us to do XYZ. Okay, those are different things. It's as if you've decided that you don't really have to do anything real, that all things being equal, the public will vote for you purely to stop Republicans from getting in the office. Not only did that not work, but you got the working class turned out and voted for Donald Trump more than what they did for the Democratic Party. I'm saying it's stuff like that. When Jon Stewart is having this conversation with Ezra Klein, both of which are liberals, and both of which are talking about this policy failed monstrously. And it failed because liberals decided that you needed all of these steps in order to get any money to get anything done. I mean, they had a review committee, and then they had a review of the review committee, and then they had a review of the review committee, and then the state had to go back. You had all of this involved in this process. None of this was going to take place in 3 years. I had a hard time believing it would take place in 8, meaning if Joe Biden got both terms, Build Back Better still might not have gone through, and you still might not have any charging stations built, or for that matter, broadband. They failed monstrously on Joe Biden's signature policy. And I'm saying that is why they lose. It's not magic. It's not that, oh, the American public are just right-wingers. I don't think it's that at all. I think it boils down to this inability of liberals to get anything real done that the American public can put their finger on and say, they did this, and so I'm voting for them because they did this, and I want to protect that. It's that. Stewart seems to be taking the tack of pointing out the failures of the Democratic Party. Now, he has no issue attacking Republicans, but I accept this notion of pointing out you fail because of stuff like this. When John Stewart was talking to Hakeem Jeffries and he pointed out to Hakeem Jeffries, hey, is there any substance in what you guys are doing? Are you going back to the basics? Maybe you need to go back to New Deal policies. And what did Jeffries say? It's a messaging issue. People feel stuff and they remember what they feel, even if they don't remember what you say. Dude, talk about missing the boat and missing the point. And in their minds, we just have to wait and the public will come back. Honestly, this is why I take such great issue with what Donald Trump is doing. Yes, I hate the fact that he's firing all these workers. And yes, RFK Jr. firing 44,000 people from Health and Human Services. Okay, that's not a good look. Not to mention you're ruining people's lives. People who vote, by the way. Trump deciding to go after unions. Right here. Going after union federal workers. Again, what does this get across? Trump administration moves to end union rights for many federal workers. Okay, do you think those federal workers are going to be okay with that? Do you think those people have jobs and kids? Do you think those people vote? What do you think those people are going to do now that you are doing that? Many of which, by the way, voted for Trump. Again, the majority of workers voted for Trump. So you are going after people who potentially voted for you, who have families, and who would be very upset with the fact that you've done this, not to mention the damage to the economy by like 100,000 people no longer having a job in America. All of it directly related to Donald Trump. You get Elon Musk running around talking about going after Social Security. Okay, so you have the world's richest man with like $1 trillion going after people who are dirt poor. And you think that's a good look? I don't like that for two reasons. One, you're hurting people. Two, you're allowing Democrats to say it's a messaging issue. And we're just going to stand and we're going to point and we're going to say, look at what they're doing. They're hurting you. And that has nothing to do with Democrats. It's not like they recobbled themselves into something that's a viable party with the notion of getting things accomplished for the American public. It's not that. It's the other one screwed up so much that Democrats should just stand there and say, hey, vote for us. We'll stop that. Or at the very least, we'll put a hedge on that. I don't want that. I distinctly don't want that. Part of the reason that I wanted Democrats to lose, if I'm being bluntly honest with you, I didn't vote for Trump because I didn't want to support that nonsense, because I knew what he was going to do when he got in office. But part of the reason that I needed them to lose is because they're worthless. The party, as it's organized currently, is a worthless endeavor. They don't get anything accomplished. You can't get Medicare for all out of a party that doesn't believe in it. You can't get an expansion of minimum wage in a party that doesn't believe in it. You can't get an expansion of worker rights in a party that doesn't believe in it. You can't get an expansion of Social Security in a party that doesn't believe in an expansion of Social Security. Meaning the party believes in nothing. It's a cult that is a fundraising mechanism. That's it. It is something that is there to gain money and to be somewhat of a backstop to whatever the Republicans are doing, but not necessarily getting anything done themselves. I'm saying that is not viable as a vehicle to get anything accomplished in this country. And it needs to fundamentally change. And if Trump goes through, and they are, the Democrats are going to have to change. They're going to scream, it's purely messaging. We just need to stick with messaging, and the American public will come back. I'm saying I don't want that. It's a nonsense proposition, yet the Trump administration that had the capability of being a dominant force in American politics. Nobody voted for this. Nobody asked him to do this. He's making the decision to do this on his own, and it will have consequences. And those consequences will be putting Democrats who believe in nothing, who accomplish nothing, back in office. You can see it in the elections that are taking place in Florida. The reason that at least Stefanik is no longer being offered the UN job is because Donald Trump realizes that his margins in the House of Representatives is narrow and will get more narrow if indeed she takes that spot in the UN. So he said no. I believe they were in Florida elections where Trump won by 30 points. A Democrat won that spot. And you have to ask the question, why would a Democrat be able to win a spot that Donald Trump won by 30 points? Is it because Trump and what he is doing is pissing off the American public. And a pissed off American public will slosh back to the other party, whether the other party is offering anything or not, just to be a hedge against what Trump is doing. I don't want that. I don't want that. But it seems like that's what we're going to get. We are joined by a damn good friend of the show, the man himself, Michael Maloof. Michael Maloof, he is a former senior security policy analyst in the Office of the Secretary of Defense, author, and regular contributing analyst of RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years of federal service experience in the Department of Defense. Michael, welcome to the show, man. How you doing this morning? You doing okay?
Well, I'm great. I hope you are as well.
I am doing much better, and thank you for that. I apologize for having to cancel yesterday. I think I apologize to the audience too. I had a medical issue that I need to resolve, and I couldn't necessarily do it at the show because it was taking place early that morning. So thank you for this, and I thank you for accepting my apology on that.
Of course.
I am super curious on your take. So Putin came out and effectively said the UN should take external governance over Ukraine. Now, his reason is very straightforward, and it's the exact same reason that the Trump administration was trying to find a way to get rid of Zelensky. Nothing can get done with Zelensky and that government that is currently in Kiev. And so Putin is like, okay, well, why don't the UN take over? We want to have negotiations. We need somebody to sign a peace deal. Zelensky is illegitimate from our point of view, and even I would imagine from the Trump administration's point of view. So what if the United Nations takes external control, send peacekeepers in, and have legitimate, fair elections with the interim government presiding over it? Now, this came out, several media outlets I used TASS for this. Give me your take on this. He's saying, and gave multiple instances where this had been done before, where the UN would take control of a government if the government wasn't necessarily legit. What are the chances of this?
Well, it has happened before, and somewhat successful and not so successful in other cases. But for the most part, I think I don't think it's going to work in this case. Zelensky needs to hold on for dear life. He's being encouraged. He's being encouraged to hold on by Macron and Starmer of UK, and that gives him all the more reason to perpetuate his existence there. And he cannot afford. What's emerging in my mind, at least, is that he cannot afford to settle because he'll be dead within 24 hours. So he's going to have to he's going to have to continue and perpetuate what is going on. Zelensky, not that I feel so sorry for him, but he is caught between the proverbial rock and hard place. And as long as he's receiving some encouragement from the Europeans, it gives him more ability and standing, frankly, to carry on. And I doubt that the UN would want to undertake that unless it had the consent of the Ukrainians. And they're not going to. I don't think they're going to abide by it. I think Putin, for his part, is looking for ways to settle because he has larger agendas other than just Ukraine. But and I think the United States also is in the same boat because it ultimately wants to come to terms with Putin, with Ukraine, because it wants to do more geostrategic type of arrangements and normalize relationships. The thing that could knock everything out, even Ukraine and any settlement with Ukraine, ultimately, to me, is Netanyahu, because if he decides to take on Iran, that brings in Russia it pits Russia against the United States, because Trump has really begun to back Netanyahu in everything that he wants to do. So there is some there's a potential relationship developing there, or connection, I should say, developing there that we got to watch. And it seems to me that by summer, if he cannot get that, if Trump can't get that agreement that he called for as a replacement for the agreement that he dropped out of, even though Iran was in full compliance at the time, namely the JCPOA, then I think he's going to allow Netanyahu to do what he wants. For Netanyahu's purposes, he needs to do something like that because of his own internal strife. His country, once again, is on the verge of civil war. So you can see that there is some relationship, and I think that Russia would come to Iran's assistance given the strategic arrangement they just recently signed. So there's all this connectivity that we've got to keep an eye on. I mean, you got multiple balls in the air at this point, and this is what's making everything so precarious, particularly now that we're into spring and we'll be going into summer. And already you've got Netanyahu bombing South Lebanon and has already given evacuation orders for South Beirut this morning. So here we go again.
We're back to this.
Yeah,
All right.
we're coming back to it. So these are things that need to be weighed and watched, because I think Ukraine, as much as Putin, as much as Donald Trump wants to settle that and settle with Russia, this other matter could just be the proverbial poop in the punch bowl.
Well, I might take a dump in the punch bowl. That is fascinating. I agree with you. I've thought to myself, like, okay, you may solve the conflict with Ukraine and then end up with another conflict in Iran, and that would just, bring Russia back into it.
Sure.
Staying with the Russia part for a moment, and then we could bounce to Netanyahu and Trump and how Russia plays into that.
Well, we gave an overview.
Yeah, totally. The talks that took place in Riyadh between the U.S. and Russia, 12 hours on the Black Sea Initiative and restarting that. Part of the deal that they were coming to a conclusion with is, okay, we'll allow the stuff in the Black Sea. However, we're not doing anything until you remove sanctions. And the rub is that the sanctions are coming out of Europe, meaning even if Trump himself wanted to remove the sanctions, he has to get Europe on board in order to do so. And this is the same Europe that has been doing any and everything in their power to crush or crash the peace initiative. You have Starmer and Macron looking for a coalition of the willing to put troops in. Starmer's military told them flat out, we have no capacity to do the things that you're talking about doing. I have serious doubts about France being able to do it. Those people will be killed immediately. They're looking for America to be a backstop. Up to this point, Trump has said no to this notion of being a backstop. Maloney has said no to this notion of putting in troops. So they have ideas, but they don't seem to have the military capacity to enact those ideas, even though they've been doing any and everything in their power to combat any notion of negotiations between the U.S. and Russia to end the war. Considering that the sanction relief is an element of this, and it's going to be a big element of it, right? Russia, because they've lost the war, so you need to bring in things beyond the war. Sanctions is something that goes beyond the war, and it shows goodwill in the context of the U.S. that, yes, the U.S. will follow through. See, we removed the sanctions. Are you all not entertained? Give me your take on this. I mean, how does the U.S. put the screws to Europe to get them on board? And do you think that they will factionalize? I mean, the fact that Italy has effectively said no, Slovakia, Hungary are probably going to be on Italy's side in this. How does the U.S. get Europe on board to remove those sanctions? Or can the U.S. even do it?
Probably yes and no. Yes, in the sense that when you consider that NATO countries are so reliant right now on U.S. military equipment, including F-35s and stuff like that, their armor or what have you. This puts them at some disadvantage because they don't have the industrial base to replicate all of that in near real time. Mm-hmm. And it will take them years and years. And so they're going to sort of be dragged along until they can become self-reliant militarily once again, which will take years, if ever, given that they would have to switch their entire industrial base when you consider it. Uh, they have some stuff, but they're not to the production levels that they would need to sustain any potential conflict with Russia, of all people, of
Mhm.
all places. I mean, it's so that's something that is a long term problem. And by then, I think NATO is going to be gone anyway, because if once the U.S. comes to an agreement with Russia on more geostrategic issues, I think Trump is basically saying, Europe, you're on your own. We have helped you fight 2 world wars already, and all you can do is get yourself. You have a suicidal mentality, and all of your disputes are based upon ancient feuds, and we're tired of them.
Agreed. They are. I've asked the question myself. It's like, dude, you've started two world wars. Why are you trying to start a third?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they seem committed to doing it.
And you see, and you listen to Starmer and Macron, and you're thinking, what is wrong with you people? Why do you insist upon pressing this issue of moving troops in, knowing that it's going to be a tripwire? It's going to be a tripwire, and it's going to create more problems. Then they talk about countries of the willing. Well, that negates Article 5 right there.
Yes.
And so, if you want to go at it with against Russia, who has more nuclear bombs than they do combined, and also has hypersonics, which they do not, it doesn't balance. So I don't know what I mean. They have to have a suicidal mentality to continue this line of thinking. Why they don't get along and try to get back to things to pre-crisis times. And okay, Europe depended upon Russia for its energy, for example. Go back to that. Why not? Because what you're getting from the U.S. is being charged up the kazoo for energy, and it's taking years. It would take years for them to find alternative sources. Europe doesn't have those sources. Russia has them. Middle East, but Middle East, like the U.S., charges exorbitant prices for those imports. And these countries are net exporting countries. They rely on outside markets to survive. U.S. doesn't need that. So the U.S. can become much more self-inclusive, and that's basically what's happening right now, as opposed to Europe. And that's why you see Europe charging all these tariffs, because they cannot afford to see Chevrolets driving on the Autobahn, because of their own markets and stuff like that, as one example. So they're at a disadvantage, and they need to cut the losses, suck it up, and learn to get along. And also, before they could resist, because they knew they had U.S. support, but U.S. has other priorities now.
Well, I guess my question would be, do you think that Trump could get them to remove those sanctions? Like, for example, Marco Rubio gave this speech, and I'm trying to find the speech. I had it queued up, and I think I got rid of the speech. But Rubio effectively pointed out, look, we need to, part of the deal that they were coming up with was sanction removal right here. This is Rubio effectively saying, hey, if we're going to get anything done, if we're going to get any deal, we need to remove sanctions. We need to look at the stuff. And again, the issue is, right here, this is the speech.
The first is we met with the Ukrainians twice, the Russians once. What we have here is an agreement in principle on a Black Sea ceasefire. We got two things from that. The first is we have more detailed definition of what the energy ceasefire entails. And the second is the principle concept of a Black Sea ceasefire. Obviously, after our meeting, as part of their release, the Russians detailed a number of conditions that they want to see met in order to do that. So we're going to evaluate that. Some of those conditions include sanctions that are not ours. They belong to the European Union. So we're going to be gathering, and sort of when our folks get back, sitting down, going through the proposals, getting their impressions of the conversations, so we can more fully understand what the Russian position is, or what their ask is in exchange. And then we'll present that to the president. We'll ultimately make a decision about what the next step is.
All right. So effectively, he acknowledges, look, some of these sanctions are not even ours.
Right.
Will Europe remove those sanctions?
I don't think so. Or because the United States is basically giving up its leverage over Europe. And the Europeans are saying, well, if we got to go on our own. But again, the Europeans fundamentally are suicidal. I don't think that common sense will prevail in their minds. They for some reason they will insist upon that resistance to Russia for historical reasons. They have always done that. Europe has tried many times, whether it was Britain or the French, historically. They've always gone to war with the Russians and lost, and yet they continue along that mindset, using Ukraine as an ability to continue that aggravation. But at some point, they've got to come to terms, and right now the leadership in both countries is not there. They're going to have to change the leadership and change the whole mentality, and begin to focus pretty much and become more populist, pretty much like the U.S. has, in order for their own self-preservation, and recognizing the reliance that they still have on outside sources for their energy and what have you. And they need to rebuild their industries because they have become so depleted now. And if they intend to rebuild a military, it's definitely going to require a greater industrial buildup. And they're just not there. And they're already in recession.
You said the U.S. has given up its leverage over Europe. What is that leverage?
Well, it's giving up the leverage in terms of basically saying, look, if you want to go your own route defensively, go ahead.
I see.
Yeah,
I see.
it's giving it up, and because the U.S., I mean, in the Trump mentality, they've given up on Europe. We've moved on from a Cold War. We've moved on from the years of catering to Europe's inability to solve its own issues. Look at Bosnia. I mean, 16 countries at the time couldn't resolve the Bosnian issue until we came in and started bombing, and then it became a U.S. war. Why?
Yeah.
I mean, you had 16 countries that couldn't deal with their own regional problem.
By the way,
And
shipping. Yemen is another
Yeah.
good example. In the conversation with JD Vance, well, that's been exposed in the leaks, Vance was pointing out, look, this is a European issue. This is not our issue. And they easily in the chat was like, yeah, Europe can't do it. Europe doesn't have the capability of doing it. And so we need to do it. Which is fascinating.
Yeah, well, and the point's well taken. I mean, that's why that signal issue became more of a foreign policy discussion than anything. It's sensitive. Yeah, you don't normally air those kinds of things. The whole signal gate thing is a separate issue, but it was predominantly a foreign policy discussion about whether or not Europe should be fending for itself. Look, most of its trade goes through the Red Sea as opposed to U.S. trade. But yet the United States, when they undertook this, what's it called, Prosperity Guardian or something like that, they invited other NATO countries to come in. The French were there for a period. The Brits were there for a period. The Germans refused to join. Yet all those countries, those countries have basically pulled out except for the Brits. And they have maybe one or two ships in there as part of this coalition of the willing to do this operation in the Red Sea, and yet the U.S. is basically is having to bear the brunt of all and responsibility of maintaining the security of shipping right now of Western shipping in the Red Sea, when our amount is like 2% as opposed to 20 or 30% by Europe.
Yeah, really good point. Fascinating point. But let's go to Iran for a moment, because I'm glad you brought that up. Trump, let's say Trump gets what he wants. He signs a deal with Putin, shakes hands, new security architecture of Europe. He goes to Moscow, signs a document, gets his photo op. And then he decides, okay, well, we can't stop the Houthis from bombing. And so now we're going to Iran because we believe that Iran is controlling the Houthis, which, again, it's not true. From my understanding, that is not true. The Houthis are their own thing, even if they may get technical assistance from Iran. Iran has said that they wanted to make a deal, Pezeshkian anyway, the president. Ayatollah says, no, we're not going to negotiate under threat. Donald Trump sends a letter that says you have 2 months to come to some kind of agreement. This is a pressure campaign by Donald Trump. He had the pressure campaign in the first term. He resumed it the second term. This time, no, he's threatening military force. The Ayatollah says, look, we're not going to negotiate under threat. And as you pointed out, they have agreements with Russia. They're close to China. They're ensconced in the BRICS organization. This is a different world than what they were in the first time around when Donald Trump was running this pressure campaign. Break this down for me. The truth of the matter is, even if they don't necessarily have, let's say, a military agreement with Iran in the sense of we will go to war for you, they will still be given weapons, support, resources, etc., for Iran to deal with this. And I don't know what the U.S. is planning on that is going to stop Iran from a response if indeed the U.S. strikes, meaning all hell breaks loose. Iran will shut the Strait of Hormuz. They will attack regional allies of the United States. Hell, they may go after the U.S. bases in the region, killing all of these people. Is Trump really willing to destroy his presidency for Netanyahu?
Well, that is one of the major questions being asked. A man who seeks peace in one area is advocating war and letting somebody else basically drag us into a conflict. No, you're absolutely right. I think since Trump's first term, things have moved along very much in terms of the relationship of Russia, China with Iran. Mm-hmm. For those countries and for BRICS and Belt and Road, as you point out, Iran has become so critical. It's become the key north, south, and east-west corridors for both BRICS and for the Belt and Road. And that's why, and on top of that, China itself relies upon most of its oil imports from Iran. And so does China, so does Japan, and most of the Far East countries. So, you know, they're not going to want to have a war going on with Iran, given that dependency, because they're going to have to find alternative sources. And the oil, the type of oil that China requires, and even Japan, is a crude oil that, or even a refined oil that you cannot find it, let's say, in Saudi Arabia. It's totally different. The quality of the oils are different. That's why you see, even though Saudi Arabia is willing to sell oil, it's not of the type that China requires for its own industries, as much as they get from the, I guess, the sweet crude from Iran right now. I'm not an oil connoisseur, so I can't give you the stages of the qualities, but yeah, but there are differences in the quality and the type of oil from each one of those regions and countries in that region. So that's the last thing any of those countries are going to want, is a conflict with Iran. And whether Trump has come to that conclusion, I'm sure that there are back channels going on right now to the Trump administration by these countries expressing this concern. And if considering the fact that Trump does have a relationship with Xi Jinping, I'm sure that he's hearing it from the Chinese angle as well. But for some reason that no one can explain, Netanyahu has this hold on Trump, and Trump just seems to cater to every whim that Netanyahu has. Does that mean that is that because of the Israeli lobby? Is it because of the U.S. defense lobby? His donors. I know he has a commitment to Miriam Edelman, but even she has a problem with Netanyahu these days, as I understand it. Mm-hmm. So, but at the same time, Netanyahu needs for the U.S. to get engaged to actually have a war with Iran because of its own internal strife inside of Israel itself. And that's something that needs to also be watched. You got the settlers becoming much more, and there are ongoing demonstrations now by the ultra conservatives not wanting to be drafted in the military. And as I pointed out earlier, you already have Netanyahu rattling the saber once again against South Lebanon and South Beirut, and that could open up that front all over again, even in Lebanon if the bombing goes on. Depends upon what happens there, but this could by summer this could really escalate into something very, very terrible.
There are only 8 million people in Israel. It's a tiny, tiny country.
Yeah.
Iran is a country of 80 million, I believe.
Yeah.
3 times the size of Iraq. They have a sophisticated military capability associated with the country. They showed a little bit of that when they attacked Israel first time around in these kind of long-range strikes. What does the US military believe, or what does the Trump administration believe that they can accomplish? And do they believe that there won't be a response from Iran if indeed they struck Iran? I mean, even if you hit Iran with nukes, look, I had a conversation with Morandi, and he pointed out, he says, we have been preparing for the US for decades. We have assumed that they were going to attack us in the way that they attacked Iraq, and we were in preparations for that. We are not overly concerned about Israel. We are concerned about the US, and we're making preparations for it even now. So does the US fully believe that they can take out everything that Iran has at their disposal with one military strike? And do you believe that the US can do that with one strike?
First of all, to answer your question immediately, I don't believe that any of the militaries can do it in a full-blown military strike initially. However, I don't think that's going to be the strategy. I think the strategy could be, if you look at the examples of what happened with going after the leadership both of Hamas and Hezbollah to try and neutralize them, even though their little minions are still running around. It suggests to me that Israel's approach may be to go after the leadership in Iran. The leadership, as well as the IRGC leadership, as well as the nuclear scientists themselves, and pinpoint taking out those levels of leadership in order to cripple. It won't destroy it. They won't go with the hope that internally things can change internally. I think that could. The United States may not want to get involved ultimately, or Trump may realize that if he goes full bore and backs Netanyahu, it's going to poison the relationship he has with these other countries, and he may not want to risk that. I don't think, but you never know. But right now, that's my thinking, and I think that's why Netanyahu and his people may be considering a more surgical approach.
You're talking about murdering the Ayatollah.
Yeah, exactly.
But they realize that the response to Iran will be just outrageous at that point. Like, meaning no country, like if they murdered Trump, or if they murdered Joe Biden or somebody like that, even John Kerry, the US response would be outrageous. And I would imagine the same thing would be true for Iran. They have to know that.
Well, they may be prepared for that. Look, they expected that with when they took out Nasrallah. They dropped 80 tons of bombs to get him in a bunker.
I know, but that's Lebanon. That's not Iran.
Lebanon is. But it tells you. But when they went after Nasrallah, he represented something larger than just the leader of Hezbollah. He was the movement. Mm-hmm. He was something much larger in life than just a leader of Hezbollah. And he was a leader in the whole Shia movement, and when that happened, it really it almost decapitated Hezbollah, and they quieted down and they actually settled,
Yeah.
and they that's what happened. They didn't destroy them, but they have been muted considerably. And
But Lebanon doesn't even have
we
air
don't
defense.
know. Here's the other thing: we don't know the extent. I mean, we hear reports, but we don't know the extent of the damage that the last Israeli attack actually did on command control or missile defenses in Iran. When they claim that, well, we really socked it to them. Well, I don't know that, but the Iranians are saying, no, you didn't. So I don't know which is true.
Yeah.
I don't know whether their capabilities were actually diminished or not in reality,
Mhm.
because you're getting conflicting stories. That has a bearing on this. Will the Iranians have sufficient defenses to counter any surgical attacks by missiles? And it would have to be done by missiles against the leadership, both of the supreme leader and the IRGC. I don't know.
Michael, I really hope that this is just a campaign by Donald Trump in order to try to push a deal that he believes aggression and negotiation is a way of trying to get some kind of deal, as opposed to him
I concur.
actually.
I concur.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Which
we
one do you
don't.
think?
But again, we don't know the extent to which Netanyahu's influence is going to overshadow clear good judgment. We don't have any strategic thinkers in the White House. There are none.
Why do you? I mean, how is this in Trump's interest?
It's
Like
not.
that's the part that gets me, right? Even in the first administration that Donald Trump was in, and this is gonna be the last question. This seems to be diametrically opposed to the argument that Trump made when he got in office. And look,
Yeah,
from my
I
point of view,
agree.
Donald Trump's a flagrant liar, right? So I don't necessarily take anything he says as true. I do think that he wants the Nobel Peace Prize if he can get it. I think
He
he
changes
does
his mind frequently. He changes his mind frequently. That's true.
Yes. And so this idea of I'm going to end wars, not start them. Okay, if I take him at his word for that, and I give him the benefit of the doubt, with Kim Jong-un, he did this notion of Rocket Man, and he was going to attack North Korea and all of this other stuff. But he eventually settled down and said, okay, I'm going to go to North Korea. I'm going to shake his hand. We're going to make a deal. And maybe in his mind, this is the way you make deals. You threaten, and then you sign a contract, and you shake the man's hand. I hope that is what's happening with Iran. So apparently, Iran has decided that it would negotiate with Donald Trump in a back channel way. Donald Trump sent that letter for 2 months. They sent a letter back telling him something. The tone and details of the letter have not been exposed. Does this mean that they're willing to negotiate even if it's back channel? And does this?
Well, it depends upon what the supreme leader decides.
Oh,
It's not up to the
that part,
president.
right? What is in that letter? If he says "go f yourself," and that's all in that letter.
Yeah, I mean, he may have, there's internal problems in Iran right now. I don't know if Morandi got into that with you or not, but there are internal issues. I know that the president wants to wants to negotiate. The supreme leader is too cynical, has a more cynical outlook because he's dealt with Trump before. So it's going to be questionable. But what is not being considered in my mind is the geostrategic impact. Should Iran be attacked, what that will do with respect to Russia and China, who have this major reliance on Iran for its own purposes, its own foreign policy and geopolitical purposes. So that needs to be weighed in. And I'm not hearing any debate at the national level about that. You never hear any White House commentary on that.
Agreed.
It's always backing Netanyahu. So I think we're in a wait and see attitude. I hope we see something that indicates that this kind of geostrategic consideration is in play in all of this. The fact that we haven't seen any attack yet, maybe that means maybe they're deliberating after all. We just don't know it. I don't know. But it's getting very tenuous, and as I said, Netanyahu is on a timetable. He needs to have action in order for his own self-preservation. So there's that pressure that's coming from Netanyahu on Trump. And I understand that an Israeli delegation, was just here to discuss war plans against
disturbing.
Iran.
That's disturbing. Oh, look, I think if Iran is attacked, all hell breaks loose. I really do. I don't think they're going to accept being hit by the U.S. or Israel. I don't think they're just going to blow that off. I think Russia is going to feel some kind of way about it. I think China is going to feel some kind of way about it. I think Saudi Arabia is going to feel some kind of way about it, especially
They all will.
all of them.
And the Gulf Arab countries have no control. When you put U.S. and Israel together, they can't begin to mount anything against that. They can't begin to.
Michael Maloof, the man himself, former senior security policy analyst in the Office of Secretary of Defense, author, and regular contributing analyst to RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years of federal service experience in the U.S. Department of Defense. Michael, you are always welcome on the show. Thank you, my man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day, Jamal.
You too. Be safe. Always appreciate Michael. Always appreciate his point of view. I agree with him. It is terrifying that there are not large discussions about the ramifications of an attack on Iran. I think it is outrageous that some people are making this argument that, oh, we'll hit them once and they'll just, accept our hit. I think that's crazy. The idea that you're going to use nukes and the rest of the world is going to be okay with you using nukes, I think is outrageous. We will see how this turns out. Trump could be just talking with the idea of trying to get a deal. I don't know. I want to go to my guest, though. We are joined, the man himself, with fantastic hair, Peter Coffin. Peter Coffin is a journalist with over 250,000 YouTube subscribers, podcaster, and author. In the book, Custom Reality and You, they explore a world where profit is the driving force. Peter, my man, how you doing this morning? You doing okay?
I'm doing all right. It's funny you say that about my hair. A, it's definitely not where it should be today. But B, like I'm coming on to talk about Blue Sky. One of the thing all of these people talked about, like attacking me on Blue Sky for opposing terrorism. Yep. One of the things that they talked about was how bad my hair is.
I think your hair is fantastic. F those people, man. Your hair is fantastic.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it.
Look, people didn't like my homeless beard either. People were writing in the comments, finally got rid of that homeless beard. I felt some kind of way when I shaved that beard off. I was like, oh, my manliness has gone in the toilet with that. It's like in the old days, it's like people with beards, it was considered manly,
Yeah.
Blue Sky. Let's talk about that for a moment. Now, what is Blue Sky? Just explaining to the audience, because I didn't know what Blue Sky was. The audience may not know what Blue Sky is. And what's funny is I was going to contact you anyway, and you hit me up before I could hit you. What is Blue Sky?
So Blue Sky it's this alternate Twitter, basically.
Okay.
If you remember Truth Social, it's essentially Blue Truth. It's Truth Social for Blue MAGA, basically.
Truth Social for lefties, effectively.
Yes.
Okay. And you got attacked on Blue Sky. Why did you get attacked?
Well, okay, so I have been talking about how the whole Tesla thing, all the attacking of the Teslas, bombing Teslas, essentially isn't helping anybody. It's basically left adventurism. All it really does is put us like as advocates for a world that moves closer to what many would call equality, rather than get into a bunch of things, what many would call equality, a world where profits are not in command. As we move towards that.
Say that one more time. You said attacking Tesla. Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Okay, so you know all these sort of Tesla terrorist events, right?
Right. I saw the fire on Tesla where they effectively had all of these Teslas burning. They blew up. They didn't blow up the entire
I put out a video, and I've written it on Twitter and stuff, and also on Blue Sky, that's not useful. It's left adventurism. It's something that ultimately makes people advocating for a world where profits are not in command, it makes us look insane.
Yeah.
It is,
Well, it's
and
terrorism. It's
yeah, it's
literal
terrorism.
terrorism. Yeah.
No, I've outwardly said like this is terrorism, and
And by the
it's-
way, I don't like Elon Musk. like
no, I don't either.
have
I don't like
active-
Elon Musk either.
Yeah.
I do drive a Tesla. I will say that.
Do you?
Yes, I
Do
do.
you?
It is a
Do you?
used Tesla.
You
I bought
traitor.
it used.
You
Yeah.
traitor, you. No,
No, I mean it's an awesome car. You don't have to like Elon Musk to think that a car is nice.
Yeah.
And that's part of the whole thing, actually, is that I advocate really hard for people to detach their consumption from their morals and activism, because it doesn't genuinely do anything to
Yeah.
consume differently. Supply isn't straightforwardly driven by demand these days. These companies make something and then they market demand into existence. So, like, while yes, there is some accounting for people's buying habits, it's not on the level that people think. Meaning it's ultimately not useful.
Wait, I disagree with you on this. So if I take issue, let's say boycott, boycott, sanction, divestment, BDS,
Sure.
boycott, divest, sanction, for example, that has had gains. I mean, there's a reason why the states have been passing legislations on behalf of Israel against boycott, divest, sanction, because people's buying habits has affected the ability for Israel to make profits.
Well, I don't.
You disagree?
It's like, this is the example I use with that, where Israel, like, everybody celebrated super hard when McDonald's pulled out of Israel, and it's like, well, it's a war zone. There's a reason why sales went down in the entire Middle East. Like, there's wars going on. I'm not so sure I correlate it entirely with people making different choices.
Okay.
But to me, I'm very hesitant to say I think that people made choices, because I don't know that people make, like, they talked about how, oh, McDonald's sales have gone down across the Middle East, but it's like, well, yeah, I don't think there's as many people going to McDonald's in war zones, you know? Well, it makes
Fair
sense that
enough.
they pulled out of a war zone.
Yeah.
To me,
But the
anyway.
entire Israel is not a war zone. I mean, a rocket lands every random blue moon.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of like, if you're going to pull out of, you know, the more dangerous area, like, it's not like it's not dangerous in Israel,
Right.
to be frank.
No, it is.
I don't pretend that, like, the people of Israel, the normal everyday person, are benefiting from anything that's going on that the state of Israel is doing. It's not like they're all being put in danger by their state. It's ridiculous.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
But anyway, I've made that argument, and whether people agree with that argument or not, it's certainly not worth telling me I should die over.
Right. Of course.
Which is
And by the way, this is a problem with the left, right? Like, from my point of view, if you are having coordinated attacks against Teslas because you don't like Elon Musk, okay, that's terrorism.
It's terrorism. It sows division. It creates fear among the people you should be trying to court for a mass movement. Like, it scares people. And then on top of it, it gives the state more reasons to crack down on dissent. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Especially against Teslas. Like, Elon Musk myself. I think
I
he
am
is
also not.
deeply problematic. I mean, the idea of the richest man on the planet going after the poorest people in this country who are, like, on Social Security is outrageous.
You can't cut your way to growth. Like, the thing that they're trying to do is create economic growth. You can't cut your way to that. It doesn't work that way.
Dig into that. Explain that to the audience. What do you mean by that?
So, first off, just to use a more localized example, I know you're in Virginia now, but DC is still close. DC, they've cut tons of government jobs, and it has had a massive effect on the DC economy. Like, I've seen news stories about how businesses aren't making the money that they were just months ago because people don't have money. Like, there's a lot of people with government jobs in Washington, DC, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And apparently it has affected the economy there. Like, they've cut these things, and that slows down the economy. And their argument might be, well, in the long term, it will make things better. I don't think that's the case, because you have to be circulating economic power in order for the economy to be working. And when
Agreed.
you cut, you slice off part of that cycle, and it can't go around like it's supposed to. You have to find, like, yes, I do agree that there are plenty of things that our government does that are worth cutting, but it's not. They're cutting into a lot of the things that should not be cut into.
No, agreed. Like, if you build, under normal circumstances, the idea of building out railroads, building roadways,
Mhm.
traffic riverways, those things allow economic growth, but you got to have the money to build them.
Yep.
You still got to build that stuff, right? High speed rail, broadband. Like, that was the whole Build Back Better thing that Joe Biden was putting out, where he built no EV stations.
Yeah,
And
we never got
apparently
any of that.
never got any of it, right? And Ezra Klein wrote the book on it. John Stewart was talking to Ezra Klein, and they were talking about like 10 steps that you have to go through, where it's like you put out your proposal, the state comes back with theirs, then a regulator comes back with theirs, and and it's like, okay, dude, no wonder nothing got accomplished. I agree with you. You can't cut your way to growth. You have to, getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, fair enough. Firing all these people is not doing that. That is a
It's
different.
not. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's frustrating because the way that they've sold all of this is something that, like, it's technically good. There's tons of fraud and waste in our government. It's
Agreed.
if you were to actually cost benefit analysis everything and cut the things that actually don't benefit people, that would be an ideal situation, but that's obviously not what they're doing.
Let's go back to Blue MAGA for a bit.
Yeah.
This subject has fascinated me. It really has. And it's not just you, what they're attacking and, giving death threats to, which is, again, outrageous. It's like, hey, I believe that this is terrorism. You should die. It's like,
Yeah.
whoa, where is this coming from, right?
Yeah.
Jake Uger is another really good example of this. So TYT, after the election, had a come to Jesus moment, especially Anna and Jake. And they were like, I'm not really on board for the trans kid stuff. I think it's a bad idea. Or I'm not on board for trans men playing women's sports. I think it's a bad idea. I don't think the American public is for it. And they flipped out. The left media that is ostensibly known as, Democratic adjacent media, they lost their minds.
Sure.
Oh my God, I cannot believe you're saying this. You're becoming a Trumpster. You're moving to the right. And mind you, none of his points of view has changed on this stuff. And I'm not defending TYT. I'm pointing out how cultish these groups are, where any
definitely.
level of deviation is immediately responded to, which just a maximal appraisal, as opposed to, okay, Jenks has a different point of view on this, and just keep it moving. They can't do that. You have to fall in line with each and every tenet of whatever the hell we come up with that we believe in. And whether that's you putting out, hey, Elon Musk sucks, but Tesla is a pretty decent car, you shouldn't blow it up. Or
It's not even that it's a decent car. Even if it was a shitty car, you shouldn't blow it up. It doesn't help. It makes
fair enough. This is like me saying somebody got killed and it's like, God, she was so attractive. And my mom is like, so if she was ugly, it would be okay. Well, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying.
such a shame. That
Yeah,
ass.
it's a shame. Yeah. Only the rich die young. Why? Because they got the money to live a decent life. Like, they don't want to go nowhere. I guess my point is, like, they are taking this maximalist approach. And recently, apparently, somebody told Jake, I don't want to be on your show anymore. And I don't want you
They
on my
called him
show.
a bitch. I was just looking at that earlier this morning.
That is astonishing. And again, it's not, the economic populism hasn't changed from Jake's side of it. It's just any deviation is too much.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it. I do not get that. Like, I fight with right wingers. I used to fight with right wingers all the time on fault lines. Steve Gill is a really good example.
Yeah.
Steve Gill's point of view is nonsense. I think he's so full of shit, right? I still like the guy. Like, but they can't do that. Malik is another good example.
Malik's an awesome dude. I love Malik. I haven't had much contact with him since you guys stopped your show, which sucks. But like, he's an awesome dude.
My family member hates him. My family hates him. They're Democrats, and they look at him and they're like, "Oh my God, he's such an asshole on CNN." And as I point out, it's like he's partisan on CNN because he has to be partisan on CNN.
Yeah.
Where he wasn't that way on fault lines, he was just giving his point of view on fault lines because I'm not overtly partisan, right? Like, I'm not a Democrat. So I don't
Makes
take
sense.
this kind of automatic Democrat point of view. So Malik can just be himself, even though he's still on the right. I don't understand this idea where any deviation is too much. I don't get it.
Well, I ascribe this sort of fandom paradigm to everything. It's the book I'm writing is called The Road to Fandom. It's a play off of the Hayek book, The Road to Serfdom. It's about how our primary social mode, in my opinion, is a sort of advanced form of consumerism, where the various types of things that we consume are our identity, our community, and essentially our entire belief system. And it goes back to what I was saying a little while ago, but the reason why all of these people refuse to allow any sort of deviation in view is because they're operating in the same way a Star Wars fan does about canon. Like, what is canon? What is actually real within the established universe of Star Wars or Marvel or whatever?
Mhm.
You're contradicting canon. You're saying, like, well, actually, this part of it isn't good. And they're like, no, that's not the story. That's not how the story works. I'm sorry, but Emperor Palpatine was definitely there.
I'm that guy, by
it's
the way,
that.
with Star Trek. I'm that guy.
It's that. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And it's that same viewpoint applied to everything, whether it's politics or current events or many things that are not technically consumption are treated like consumption now. They're treated like Star Wars or Marvel or what have you. And I think that's kind of where all this comes from. And the problem with that is it operates dogmatically, but the dogma itself isn't really set in stone, so it can change at any
Mhm.
time. Like, whatever the official narrative is becomes the dogma, and it's flexible. Like, that's the thing that makes it scarier, in my opinion, than something like religion, because religion doesn't really operate that way. Religion has sort of they have holy books that are the dogma, you know? Like,
Yeah.
there are variations, and like, this church accepts all people type things, but they're ultimately like bound to the books eventually. Whereas, you know, Star Wars, they threw out an entire large amount of the canon when Disney bought it. They rebranded it Star Wars Legends and completely reset their canon, and they changed things, and people are all mad about it. But then after a few years, it's like, well, that's canon, so that's what Star Wars is. And you have people that will either defend or attack based purely on that, whether or not it is real and true in the Star Wars universe or not. And that's what we're looking at. It's me saying, yes, Elon Musk sucks, but I drive a Tesla, and so do a lot of normal people. I live in Minnesota, and holy hell, is this a blue ass,
Yes.
Tim Walz ass
Tim
state?
Walz. Yep.
3 out of 10 cars on the road are Tesla Model Ys here. Like, it is. There are so many people here who, I promise you, hate Elon Musk. I promise. If I were to walk down the street and stop every Tesla I saw and ask, what do you think about Elon Musk? The chances of them saying he's a bitch are very high.
Yeah.
People who don't support a look, the name, the guy, the great man, or whatever, they might consume one way or another because they're buying things based on what they like or what they don't like, rather than based on an identity and the fact that their community is based entirely around this established canon. It's really pernicious because it ends up making it so that you have all of these different groups that are essentially acting like opposing fandoms, like, Star Trek is so much better than Star Wars, or DC is so much worse than MCU. And yes, I'm not arguing one way or the other. But it's like, that's how we're out now, set up in society. Like, Elon Musk and Trump and Tesla and all that, that's Star Wars. And like, now I don't know who's doing EVs other than Tesla that's successful on any major level. But like, whoever that is Star Trek now. It's like, they're the good guys, and whatever they do is good. These guys are the bad guys, and anything associated with them, anything even vaguely alluding to them, that's bad. And there's no gray area. It's one way or the other.
But wasn't it always, and I want to say always that way, but isn't that just the way the political factions break down? Like you have people who are Democrats, you have people who are Republicans, they represent about 30% of the public, and they have their teams. We have the vagina head wearers on one side, and we have the Trump head wearers on the other. And they form cliques.
Absolutely.
And then you have the regular American public who doesn't really care and who only see Snapchats of whatever the hell we're talking about at the particular moment. Like, is it that? Like, meaning normal people will have certain points of view that go to the left and to the right. And they're not necessarily ideologically wed to either one. It's just, okay, well, what do we think is best in this particular moment? And to be honest, some have ridiculous ideas on things, right?
I think for the most part, that's 100% what people are mostly like. And I think that this ideology I'm talking about mostly applies to where we would call team sports previously. It's kind of a market incentive / consumption version of tribalism is basically what I'm getting at.
Yeah. What is that book going to be called, by the way? Just so the audience.
The Road to Fandom, and I'm working on it. I'm a ways off from completing it, but yeah, I think it's going to be, as far as I'm concerned, it explains a lot of the craziness that we see. Like I got mass reported on Blue Sky and banned off of it for opposing terrorism.
You got banned on Blue Sky
for opposing terrorism.
You know what's ironic about that is that lefties would complain about being censored on Twitter.
Oh, they absolutely do. They complain and they act like, oh, they're so censorious. They don't allow the left-wing viewpoints there. And then I go there and I express something of nuance, not even of right-wing. I mean, obviously they consider it right-wing, but I think a normal person would probably, like a person who's nonpartisan and doesn't really pay attention to this shit, is like, why the fuck are people blowing up Teslas? I think that's probably what they when they see this stuff on the news, they go, why the fuck is this happening?
Right. And the left is like, that's a great thing.
Yeah. And they're like, yeah, it's awesome. But it's like, no, people like aspire to like own things that are nice. And
like, I'm a random person. I'm driving around in a Tesla. I think Elon Musk sucks. I think Trump sucks. And my car get blown up. And I'm like, what the hell?
I mean, not to say there isn't an Elon Musk fandom of absolutely unbearable people who support Tesla purely because they support Elon Musk.
Of course.
That exists. I don't want to pretend they're the worst and they make the worst stuff on the internet. Like there was this song that I posted yesterday on Twitter that one of them made, and it was the most cringe thing I've ever seen in my life. It was called "Thank You, Elon Musk." It was
thank you for destroying Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Thank you for finding all these workers. Thank you for the. It's like, okay, that's not a thank you moment.
Yeah, what the fuck is wrong with you? What the fuck is wrong? But see, and this is the normie coming out of me. What the fuck is wrong with all of these people?
Yeah. He is not somebody I aspire to be. There should be no billionaires if there's one homeless person. And I would argue there should be no billionaires at all. It skews our politics. He is going to be, or potentially, the first $1 trillion man, which I think is outrageous. Have you ever seen, and I have to let you go, bro, have you ever seen Altered Carbon?
Yes, I have, actually. That's a pretty good.
Oh, God, that show's so good.
Yeah.
So the premise of it is that people could change bodies.
Yeah.
That they've gotten to the point where you can create a body and you can download the consciousness onto a chip and put it into a new body. And so you get the first like multi-trillion-dollar people because they have so much money and they live forever that they just keep accumulating money over and over. That's going to be Elon Musk. That's going to be Elon Musk. And that is not
generational wealth without the generation.
Yeah. There's a scene in it where the guy goes to a colony of lepers, per se. I don't know what they are, but they have some kind of disease that's transmitted through touch. And he allows himself to touch the masses and dies in the body in order to transfer into a new body and give out money and everything else as he dies in this kind of iconic way. Like, it's so over the top, but you can see this thing of like, Musk is going to be that guy.
Oh, definitely. Like he's trying to be that guy. Like the Neuralink stuff. Like I promise you, that's where that's supposed to go eventually.
Peter, man, I always appreciate you. I'm sorry you got evicted off Blue Sky. I think it's outrageous. It is super ironic.
I complained a lot. I did complain a lot in emails, and then I also I tweeted it at Elon Musk, and I think I tweeted it at Elon Musk, and I tagged Blue Sky in my tweet, and they very, very shortly after reinstated my account. I think they didn't want. Yeah, they didn't want the idea of somebody being banned off of Blue Sky for terrorism getting to Elon Musk.
Oh, but the idea that a lefty network that is supposed to not believe in censorship censored you, not for saying anything insane, but for saying something that was ideologically against vandalism, at the very least, terrorism at the maximum, a maximalist way of putting it, is astonishing. Like, do they not see how weird that is, that that's the position that they effectively take? Oh, this guy is saying something we don't like. Let's get rid of him.
Yeah. And then afterwards, after I got back on, so I said, well, I'm back. You guys couldn't get rid of me. And somebody says, well, you fucked around and you found out. It's like,
what is wrong with them?
It's just like, do you not understand that you need a mass movement to accomplish any of these things? And you do everything possible to keep the masses away from you.
Peter Coffin, everything wrong with the left. Everything wrong with the left, right there. I think it with Cenk. I think it with Blue Sky and them getting rid of you. I think they don't know what to do, and they have all this frenetic energy that effectively it's going nowhere. Peter Coffin is a journalist with over 250,000 YouTube subscribers, podcaster, and author. In his book, Custom Reality and You, they explore a world where profit is the driving force. And Peter, where can people find you?
On X, at Peter Coffin, on Blue Sky again, on Blue Sky again, at Peter Coffin, but also on YouTube at Peter, and also at Important D's for my very important documentary series.
Badass. Peter, always appreciate you, my man. You're always welcome here. Thank you for this.
Thanks for having me, man. Always good talking to you.
You would never be evicted from here if you say a point of view that I don't like.
I appreciate it.
All right, let's go to my next guest. We are joined in the after hours, Sarah Bills. Sarah Bills, host of DD Geopolitics, a fantastic site, by the way. Everybody should check it out. How are you doing, Sarah? You doing all right?
Good. How are you?
I am doing fine. It's later in the evening or later in the morning. I know you're in California.
This is
so
much
this was early
better.
for you. Yeah. Well, I didn't have a show yesterday, and so I was trying to do an extended show today. I'm even going to try to get Miranda to come on later in the day to give the audience what they want. Give the audience.
Yeah, they want that.
Yeah, it's like dance for them, dance.
Yeah.
How are you doing this morning? All good?
Yeah, we're good. How are you?
So far, so good. I saw the Turkish protests. I'm fascinated by the Turkish protests because, from my point of view, and maybe from the America's point of view, maybe I'm extending it too far, right? I should keep it to my own point of view. Erdogan is a strong man. Erdogan is in control. Erdogan runs the government of Turkey. Erdogan has political opposition, locks up his political opposition, and all hell breaks loose. The court is unraveled, and mass protests taking place in Istanbul and other areas of Turkey. Is Erdogan's position of power under challenge at this moment?
I don't think so.
I
don't think so. I'm not an Erdogan. I'm not pro Erdogan. I'm not necessarily anti Erdogan. But this guy can't run anymore. The opposition cannot run anymore legally. So I don't.
Well, wait.
I'm not
he
really
can't run legally because they put him in a jail.
Well, because they rescinded his degree. Now, I haven't looked into why they rescinded the degree. It has to do with it's something to do with the previous university in Cyprus, something with the Cypriot University. I haven't looked into much, but if you don't hold a degree, you cannot hold office in Turkey, and you can't even run for president. So he can't run anymore. This guy's kind of a neocon. He's a Western kind of not a shill, not really a shill. He's not really too propped up by Westerners, but he's a secularist. He is an Atlanticist. He is a NATOist, and so he would be bringing Turkey further into the fold of the West.
Yes.
I don't
By
know.
the way, I'm not saying he's a good guy. I'm just saying.
No. I know. I don't think that Erdogan's in danger of being overturned yet. The protests don't really have very much traction. a lot of the footage we're getting from there is, God, we're in the age of it, is AI or old footage mixed with AI to make it look. It's it's been very difficult to report on. Like the cool Pikachu Joker picture, that's AI, that's not even real. So it's like you don't really have a really clear grasp on what's happening. Plus, it's not being reported by the media, probably because either they don't care, they don't want Erdogan to be overthrown, or because it's still kind of a nothing burger. I don't think I want Erdogan to be overthrown. So it might be my bias or hopefulness showing through. I don't want more more instability in the region. And I think that getting rid of Erdogan, someone who's been in place for such a long time and is almost an institution on himself, would throw that entire region into absolute chaos, especially what's going on with Syria. So that kind of gives me a little bit of pause to say, what are the forces that are behind this sort of uprising? Is it organic? Why am I seeing so many American-inspired flags? Why am I seeing so many kind of Eurocentric sort of things happening? A lot of gay pride stuff, which is not Turkey. Not that I care, but it's just not Turkey. It feels very forced. The Pikachu stuff felt very commercial, which, I mean, we all love Pikachu. I mean, Pikachu was real. He was at the protest. Sure, it was adorable, but I felt like that felt a little bit like, and just some of the ideas that are being espoused, I'm like, this feels a little inauthentic. I don't know how to explain it. So I've been trying to observe at an arm's length, and you really can't get too much cohesive messaging out of the opposition. It's just kind of Erdogan should go, but we don't really understand what their platform is or what their plans are or what they would do if Erdogan was gone. So it's not really cohesive yet, but again, there's still a lot of time for them to develop into something.
His polling over the course of the various elections have gotten weaker.
Yeah.
He, like you say, he's an institution in himself. I don't know what Turkey is without Erdogan, if I'm being bluntly honest with you. I don't know if anybody does, to be truly honest. He has been a force in that region. He is cagey as all hell. He is like, if you're talking about somebody who can, maybe Netanyahu is the only other person who I've seen cling to political power in the way that Erdogan has, with a caginess in order to do so. And by the way, I'm not saying these things are positive. I'm just saying these things are effective.
Yeah, they're just real.
He's functioned. Yeah, he's been able to effectively balance Russia against the U.S. or Russia against the West and do this dance where neither can trust him, short of what does Erdogan want? That's what you trust. He's going to go to what he wants. The opposition itself, okay, fair enough. If some of those protests are manufactured, Erdogan's power base, though, is not in Istanbul. It's in the other regions.
He's more so favored in the rural regions. This is a very metropolitan, urban sort of uprising. I don't want to say uprising. It's not really like that violent protest.
Just protest.
Yeah.
He has been locking up opposition. I guess my thing is, and I guess my major question is this a threat to power? And I guess your answer is, at this point, no.
No, but it could be. I mean, all that needs to happen is somebody with really vested interests that are anti-Erdogan to get seriously involved. I mean, there's plenty of time for them to be co-opted. It's not out of the realm of possibility. And as we get closer and closer to the election, especially with Imamoglu, he won resoundingly the recent election for his party lead. Things will probably get a lot hotter as we get closer to the presidential election, because without him being disqualified, he's the nominee and he's polling much higher than Erdogan. So once we get closer to the election, it could potentially be explosive.
When is the election, by the way?
Let's find out. I don't remember. I know that they just had one not too long ago.
So they have a while.
It also seems 2028.
Okay.
So they do have a while. But they can also do snap elections because they're under a parliamentary system. So that's also possible if Erdogan was to lose his majority or his coalition in the parliament. But they're fighting in the parliament too. I think there's a very large divide over how they handled the Israel-Palestine conflict. I think they were one of the only parties that were really in a position to make a serious change, and they didn't. In fact, Erdogan pushed more ships to go to Israel. I don't think that really went over that well, especially given the amount of refugees that are in Turkey. You also have the Syrian refugee problem, and Turkey has not done anything to fix what the issues are in Syria. So those people cannot go home, even though he's forced a large number to go home to another unstable country. So it's hard to tell what's going on or what will go on, since there's so much time between now and the potential elections, and we don't know if the government will fall apart. There's also nobody. It doesn't seem that anybody's really coming to Erdogan's aid like they did in the last attempted coup. What was that, 2020, 2018, something like that? And Russia really did come to their aid, but that was to have a "you owe me" one. And I don't think that they're going to come this time. I really don't. I don't know who would come to save him. This guy seems like he would enjoy embrace from the EU. So I don't think that Erdogan will see support from anybody, really. He's not a friend to the Islamic world. The Turkic states and in the Neo-Ottoman Empire have no power. There's not a lot of leverage. The location of Turkey is what gives it its power. Right. Its location will always give it a tremendous amount of power. Even when their currency is in free fall, they still have a tremendous amount of power, which it's in free fall again, which is probably being done on purpose. But they have a tremendous amount of power. And just like you mentioned, Erdogan's probably one of the only people that knows really how to wield that in a way that's advantageous to himself and to his country. I don't think that Turks know how bad it can be. It can get very, very bad for them if they get co-opted into the EU, if they get further westernized. They'll be forced to do things they've never even imagined. Like, it's just, it's like you don't know what you got till it's gone, just like Syria next door.
Well, the EU doesn't seem to want them. They've been knocking on that door for like 20 years.
Right.
And
but now with they're opening up more doors to Balkan Muslim majority countries. So I don't know for much longer they can hold out on Turkey. Plus, if they get this kind of neocon, neo-lib guy in there, it might make a stronger case. I always say, like, Turkey's too brown for the EU and too white for Sisto. So they're kind of stuck in this weird purgatory. This guy could potentially help them kind of jump that hurdle because he's so amicable to the West. He's like Annalena Baerbock in a guy. Like, he's pretty liberal. He's pretty liberal.
Oh, she's so attractive and so nuts. And I know I gotta stop saying that because they're like, oh, he's so sexy. She's God, man. There's something about her that I think is so attractive, but she's nuts. Wow. I mean, she is a lunatic in regards to, more war. I don't care what the Germans want. We're going to fight the Russians and all of this other nonsense. I want to move to another issue real quick. I did not know about this until Maloof pointed this out. Israel is once again bombing Beirut.
As we speak.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is coming out of the blue to me.
Yeah.
And just so the audience knows, there are people in those buildings.
Yeah.
It's not like they're doing this as a demolition. They're killing people. CBS News, weirdly enough, reported that Israel was using people as human shields and that they were ordered. Right here. Here's the story, which, again, we knew about this. Mm-hmm. I'm more shocked that CBS is reporting this now. Israeli soldier tells CBS he was ordered to use Palestinians as human shields in Gaza. And the reporting is that Israel is going back in Gaza for another military campaign.
Yeah.
What is going on here? Is this purely because Netanyahu is under, let's say, legal pressure, or they're trying to put him in a cage at this point? And there was a story, God, man, that was reporting about the corruption that Netanyahu with the Qataris. What is going on here? Why this reinvigoration of the war against Lebanon. I mean, you can't even say Hezbollah at this point because Hezbollah has been decapitated, against Lebanon, Syria, and now going back in Gaza. What is going on?
I think that a lot of it is pushing the limit, seeing how far they can go. They've also been given pretty much carte blanche from the Trump administration. They've said more than once, we will give them the tools that they need to complete the job. They also said, give back the hostages. Both Caroline Levitt and Trump said, or all hell will break loose. The hostages, according to Israel. For me, I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't even know if half these hostages exist. But for Israel, and for all intents and purposes, the hostages have not been returned, and now all hell is breaking loose. I don't think that it's because of internal strife inside of Israel. I think that it's because they are enabled to do so. They have, excuse me, the United States bombing Yemen at their behest. That's not for us. That's not for ships in the Red Sea. That's for Israel. That's to try to provoke Iran. We have 2 carrier groups out there to try to get one of them hit so we can go into war with Iran for Israel. 7 countries in 5 years plan has not gone away just because it's been longer than 5 years. Syria has fallen. That was the second to last one. And then even when General Wesley Clark said it, he said, and finally, Iran, because they knew that Iran would be the hardest and the toughest, and they're all gone, and Iran is all that's left. That's a very scary situation that we're in. I don't know that people other than Middle Easterners, I don't know if Americans understand what's really going on or if they care. But Israel will continue to do what it's allowed to do until somebody stops it. And the United States has shown that they will not stop it. And then being the only one that has the power to do so, this doesn't look like it's ending until Israel wants it to end.
So I was looking for the Wesley Clark clip that you were talking about right here. As you say, I don't know if most Americans know that Wesley Clark said this, and it is a crime against media that they don't, because it's a big deal about this notion of, yeah, we're going to go into all of these countries within the course of 7 years. And as you point out, it doesn't matter the president. The president seemed irrelevant in this.
Yeah.
Whether it was Obama, whether it was Bush, whether it was Trump, whether it was Joe Biden, the pressure was still on, even, in fact, let me play the clip first, just so the audience knows what we're talking about and referring to. The plan, according to Wesley Clark. Come on.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the joint staff who had used to work for me. And one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." So I came back to see him a few weeks later. And by that time, we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper. He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today. And he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
So go through the countries again.
Well, starting with Iraq, then Syria and Lebanon, then Libya, then Somalia and Sudan.
That was General Wesley Clark. 1 second. I need to find it. There we are. Sarah, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. I didn't know if I was supposed to monologue.
No, you're fine. That was General Wesley Clark. You're gonna monologue. It's like, I am now taking over the show.
Yeah, it's me now.
So yeah, that was Wesley Clark pointing out. And by the way, John Kiriakou has said something very similar to that. What John pointed out when I was talking to him, that he was sitting at a meeting, and what is his name? Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney was like, "Yeah, we're gonna, be in Iran within a few weeks." And John's boss killed his mic and turned to him and said, "Did he say we were going to be in Iran?" John says, "Yes." And he says, "Okay," turn the mic back on and sat back in the meeting. And everybody in the meeting was like, "Okay, Cheney's out of his mind." Now, they got bogged down in Iraq, so they weren't able to necessarily get to Iran. I don't think they fully understand that Iran is a different animal. And oddly enough, I get the sense that the context of the world is going to be decided, weirdly enough, in this administration, on whether or not they actually make that decision to try to go into Iran, where all hell breaks loose and the world becomes a clarified thing, once again, depending upon the context of that war, every bit as much as a Ukraine war has taken place. Do you really think the Trump administration would destroy his administration and do that on behalf of Israel?
Yes.
Do you?
Yeah.
Sarah, that's terrifying.
The amount of money that they've poured into the Trump campaign and administration, this administration has already shown to be that they have no qualms about behaving unadministratively. Like, they're leaking messages, they're posting cartoons online, it's madness. I don't think that they have very many hesitations to do whatever they want. I mean, they've deployed 18 tankers and 17 B-2s to Diego Garcia. That is an unprecedented deployment. If this is just a show of force, which, I mean, I would hope that foreign policy experts understand that Iran doesn't really react to a showing of force. This is a deployment. We have 2 carrier groups out there. Nobody can convince me otherwise that they're not sitting there hoping to get hit or hoping to at least be shot at in order to get this ball kind of rolling. I do think they would bomb at least the nuclear sites in Iran. They're already pushing the currency to the limit, to its breaking point. I do think that they would bomb the nuclear power plants, absolutely, to turn the population against the government even further.
That wouldn't turn the population against the government.
No, but they think it will. They think that sanctions and, they do this. It's like, it's the definition of insanity. More sanctions for Russia, more sanctions for Iran. Blah, blah,
do they say that, or do they actually believe that? Because those are 2 different things. Meaning, I can come with a justification for something, doesn't mean the justification is true, or for that matter, that I believe it.
Have you looked at our SecDef? I mean, he's got a tattoo that says, "I'm an enemy of Islam." He's not dying, chomping at the bit to bomb the Islamic Republic at all. Like, these people are rabid anti-Muslims. Rabid. They are rabid Zionists, rabid Christian Zionists. And the other dude is married to an Indian. And we all know that or vice president is married to an Indian. We all know that India's strong affinity for Israel. I'm not saying that marrying an Indian is a bad thing. She's beautiful. Yeah. But they naturally have affinity to Israel. They always support Israel. JD Vance's only issue is with the Ukraine war. These people think that these people are anti-war. They're not anti-war. They're anti-war that doesn't help them, that isn't advantageous to them. JD Vance thinks that Iran will be advantageous to the United States. That's probably what they're going to do. I don't see any other option. And, once this doesn't work, hopefully this can be the end of the road, because it's getting out of hand.
I could be wrong. I think the war with Ukraine changed the context of the world in a way that we don't go back, maybe 50 years, give or take. No. Russia's a power at this point. You had a 1 million-man military that's been killing and dying for 3 years that Europe in no way can stand up to, even if they wanted to. It would take decades for them to get a military capacity to match Russia's at this point. That is something that is a fixed quantity going forward in our world. And I strongly suspect that if the U.S. does this, we will destroy. This notion of being a hegemon will be over. Because from my point of view, it's one thing. I always make this argument that, I still look from Game of Thrones, but it's a fantastic quote. that powers the shadow on the wall. Like
Oh.
people respond to power, whether it's there or not, because they think it's there. And the US can take this position as a hegemon as long as you don't try to do anything that a hegemon may be able to do and fail at it. Like, we have dumped hundreds of billions of dollars into a war against Russia and lost.
Mhm.
And the notion that you lose one war and immediately go into another
Yeah,
war.
but the way that we're functioning now is that it's like, that wasn't us. That was the last admin. If we would have been here, that would have never happened. We
It's
would
still
have
the US.
But that they don't see it that way. I'm not kidding. I've talked to many Americans and I've told them the same thing. I'm saying, you know, the people in the international community don't view this as like a new dawn or a new beginning for America. It's still America. And they
Right.
are very convinced that this new administration means like, we are a new country now. We have new, and it's just like, that's not really how it works. And that's what's kind of scary, is that this administration thinks that there was a huge hard system reset when they were inaugurated, and that they can end the policies of the last admin like on a dime, and that they can begin their own policies. They're not anti-war. They're anti-Biden war. They want their own thing. That's what's scary about America. Putin and Russian officials have been alluding to this over and over again. They've said things to the effect of, why would we get into a treaty with an administration that's going to change in 4 years and the whole thing could be thrown back into war? America's not a trustable partner. They're not a trustable ally. And again, and just like they said, they're fickle. They change every 4 years, 8 at maximum.
Trump's policies, believe it or not, are not that radically different from Joe Biden's.
Not at all.
In
They're
fact,
different
what it
places.
made me realize was that these were the only options that Biden had at his disposal based upon the rules that the Biden created. And that Trump is stuck with a very similar rule set. I'll give you an example. In Gaza, for example, the Biden administration wanted to get rid of the Palestinians either into Egypt or, for the matter, Jordan, like the West Bank and the Jordan, the Gaza into Egypt. Both countries said no, kick rocks. Trump comes in, tries to do the exact same thing. And you think to yourself, okay, well, why is Trump administration trying to do the same thing that the Biden administration did? Because that's the only options they had based upon the rule set that they were effectively given. Same thing with Yemen. Okay, what are we going to do about Yemen and the Red Sea? Oh, I know, let's bomb them. Okay, well, Joe Biden bombed them. That didn't work. The Saudis bombed them. That didn't work. And yet you're using the exact same policy that didn't work the first time around. And so it's like you ask this question of like, okay, well, why is Donald Trump, supposedly a new administration, effectively following in the footsteps of Joe Biden? And I think it kind of writes itself. I don't know what's going on
You
upstairs.
get involved?
I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on upstairs. It's like he's talking about Russia.
Yeah, right. Get them.
And when you look at Iran and the Biden administration, who didn't go back to the JCPOA, by the way, and I guess what does it matter? Trump would have pulled out even if he did go back. And you have Trump sending threats. We will bomb you in 2 months, or we will do whatever in 2 months. Nobody has outed the letter yet in its exact phrasing. But you get Iran sending a letter back through Oman, which again, nobody knows, but saying we are willing to negotiate in a third party de facto way. Okay, does that mean that there are negotiations taking place behind the scenes that Iran doesn't necessarily want to out? You don't think so?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I do think so. Yeah. There's definitely back channels that are open right now between most states, I would think.
Is the back channel enough to prevent a war? I guess that's a large question. And
I
guess
think that a
that
war is preventable. I just don't see a situation where we don't bomb Iran, at least one site in Iran. I mean,
Are you serious?
yeah.
I hope you're wrong.
I do
Because
too.
it's like, I know with Kim Jong-un, Donald Trump, the reason I don't know is because Trump is unpredictable in this stuff. Like, he was willing to go with the Rocket Man stuff and yet goes to North Korea, shakes his hand, signs the deal. I don't know if all of those tankers are out there as a pressure campaign of we will attack you if you don't negotiate with us. And Iran is like, dude, I can't negotiate with you under these terms. Behind the scenes, though, okay, we're willing to negotiate. I don't know if it's that or if it's, no, we are actually going to attack, in which case we're building up a force in that area in order to do so, or to have a tripwire where you hit us, which I don't, but I don't know why the U.S. would think that. Like, I don't know why the U.S. would think that Iran would hit a tanker. knowing full well what that means if indeed they hit that tanker.
No, they've just iterated more than once that if Ansarallah does, then they're blaming Iran. So I also we still haven't gotten like a clear message on what the outcome of the United States-Russia talks with that one chunk that said Russia agrees that Iran should never find itself in a place where it could potentially destroy Israel. Does that mean that they don't want Iran to have nukes? Is that misinterpreted? Is that a mistranslation? What did that mean? This was a very odd thing. And now we're going back to the age-old story that we always do. Iran's only a week away from a nuke.
Yeah.
That came out yesterday, I think, or the day before. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they've been a week away from a nuke since I was
20
like
years.
15.
Yeah.
So,
No, literally, I can show you the picture of Netanyahu in the Senate or the House giving a speech like 20 years ago where it's this cartoonish bomb. And he's like, they're weeks away.
Yeah.
Iran is going to get the bomb.
so we'll see what the messaging is. I mean, we've got so much. I mean, Peter Coffin was just here talking about the domestic issues. We've got so much going on that the last thing that we need is a bombing run into Iran, especially since we have an enormous Iranian diaspora. Who the hell knows what the hell they would react? It's a very tenuous situation. But again, we talked about it earlier. Israel is in a war on three sides of their own doing voluntarily, and they're keeping it going. So we are already dealing with very irrational actors.
Sarah, I always appreciate you.
This was a little bit of a black pill. I'm sorry.
No, you're perfectly fine. Black pills are fine. It's just, it is deeply unfortunate if that's indeed what they end up doing. It'll give us something to talk about, unfortunately.
Well, I'm a Slav. I prepare for the worst. I'm always prepared for the worst.
Sarah Bills, DD Geopolitics. Sarah, what can people find you, by the way?
Just find us at ddgeopolitics.com. We should be releasing the footage of our recent video or visit to Donbass and the Zaporozhye power plant. So that should be sort of interesting, kind of see what's going on. While we were there, Ukraine actually tried to bomb it. So that's still going on. It's good to know that they're acting very rationally out in Ukraine. But yeah, so just check us out at ddgeopolitics.com. We're around. You guys
Can you give us anything about that going to Donbass? What was that like?
I didn't go on this trip, but my partner did. They went to Melitopol and Zaporozhye, and he said it was a very, very, very tough trip. I suggest you guys give him a shout, but he said it was very, very tough. He's still recovering. It's been like 3 or 4 days, and he said it was a really difficult trip.
Oh, just to get there.
Just to get there, and then emotionally while you're there, you're dealing. They're very immersed in the local population, so they're talking to people all the time. It's very emotionally draining. Yeah. And they were inside of the plant for a very long time, interviewing the plant operators and everything. So
these were people that were effectively being bombed by the Ukrainian government.
Yeah.
I've met one person that was in that bombing. I met her before I got into politics. And I didn't know the significance of the conversation that I was having with her at the time. I'm from the South. I talk to anybody. And I remember my ex-wife and I went on a trip to, I think it was South Carolina. And one of the shop owners was Eastern Ukrainian. And she says, yeah. She says, the bombings that are taking place. She said, I speak Russian. She was very sheepish about it, right? Because she didn't know what my point of view was. I didn't have a point of view because at the time I wasn't all that into politics. And she says, yeah, the bombings, she said, I have family members. My mom is at a bomb shelter. She's been there for a long period of time.
They live there. They live in the bomb shelters. They live underground.
Yeah. She said they would go out to get food, come back.
That's
in
it.
the bomb shelters. She said they kill my teachers, they kill family members. Mm-hmm. She said, I speak Russian. I just want this conflict to end. I don't care about the politics. This is outrageous. I want it to stop. So,
well, sentiment for Trump is very bad amongst the Russians and the Ukrainians. So that we have ruined our soft power on the populations of both Ukraine and Russia.
Even with Trump trying to end it.
Yeah, they hate Trump. They don't want to end it because they don't think that the goals have been achieved. It's funny because more than one person in Russia has, when I was there the last time, said if Putin even tried to end this war right now, it wouldn't matter. We would just keep going. we would just keep going in Ukraine. We're not done.
Somebody else told me that. Was it you that told me that?
I don't know,
That
but
their thing is like, we want the special military operation to be completed in full. Period.
full, all goals complete, especially after what happened in Kursk. There's a lot of dead civilians there, children, civilians. It's bad. So,
From my understanding, there are mass graves in the area, and Russia is talking about war crimes that Kiev committed in Kursk. And look, you can understand why. You have Nazis going into Russian territory. What do you think is going to happen, right? Sarah Bills, she is independent journalist, U.S. Navy veteran, and co-founder of DD Geopolitics. Check them out. They do damn good work. Sarah, thank you for this.
thank you guys. Have a good weekend.
You too. Be safe. All right. We have finally come to the end. We finally come to the end. This was a long show. Demilitarization, denazification, those were the goals of the special military operation. That is true. That is true. I strongly suspect that Putin is going to accomplish those goals one way or the other. I want to give a shout out to my chats. We have Jabari, VOC Media, good morning. Include Jamal's morning show. Thank you, Jabari. Deep shout out. And Jabari, I got to get with you. Let me make a note on my paper. Things have been hectic, to put it mildly. I apologize for the delay in getting with you. As you can see, I've been bouncing around from place to place to place. I'm a leaf in the wind. It's a weird experience. It's a very weird experience. I have been stable for decades. No, it's a very bizarre experience to be a leaf in the wind. If anybody is tailor-made for it, yeah. I am usually a rock. My goal at that point is kind of, okay, figure your way out, how to deal. Being a leaf in the wind right now is, I deem, necessary, just because I don't know what is going to happen with negotiations. I don't have a belief that those negotiations are going to turn or matter in the near future. I think these things are going to go out for a period of time. But I do want to see what is happening with this stuff before I make a decision on nailing down a residence in Richmond. So for the time being, you will see me floating around from place to place to place. And by the way, it may not be completely in the US. KN, is that right? KN Kareen. Jesus, Kareen, you look like my ex-wife. That is bizarre. Jamal, can you do a segment on the ONG saga with Cuban doctors and the fight the US and the Caribbean employing them? I will try to find somebody on that. I only vaguely saw this, where I think I might even have the clip, where Marco Rubio goes to Cuba or Jamaica or somewhere, but he's in that region. And he is effectively going after the Cuban doctors. Now, Cuban doctors have been doing God's work. I mean, for God's sake, they're doctors. Doctors pretty much everywhere are the same, with a certain ethos, regardless of where they are. The notion that you're going after the same people who've been sent all around the world to do God's work is outrageous. It is purely political. If I find somebody on it, Kareen, I think that's right, KN, I would do my damnedest. I would do my damnedest. Thank you very much. And yeah, you look a lot like my ex-wife. I saw that picture, I was like, wait a minute, is that right? Where's the name? Where's the name of this person? Carla Nixon. The difference is that Vietnam won the war. I think he's referring to John Kiriakou, because John and I got into a back and forth over this notion of whether Ukraine should be part of the negotiations. My point of view was, hell no. These people are goofballs. And like the fact that they want to keep the war going, they're only there to poison the well, to take a dump in the pool of negotiations that the US and Russia are trying to accomplish. The US is the funder of the war. Ukraine can't even pay its soldiers at this point. So why on earth should people who have no capacity to fight on their own be part of the negotiations? I get it's their country, but it's not even their country. You have an overthrow of the legitimate government of that country, and the people who you're talking to are effectively interlocutors. They have hijacked that government. They're not the legitimate government. The legitimate government fell in 2014 Everybody else that came after it is part of a coup government that we effectively put into place. So if indeed we put that government into place, why do we need that government there since we are controlling that government? Yeah, Zelensky is going rogue in some of these bombings, but if Donald Trump says, I'm done, and walks, figure it out on your own. Could they do it? And the answer is no. The answer is no. I don't buy this premise that these guys should be there to poison the well in order to end the conflict that we had a large hand in starting. This kind of leading down the primrose path, as Alexander McCurris would say, where we like offer NATO membership. We put in our goons and all of these other things. We help them as they try to overthrow. John himself pointed out all the stuff that we were doing effectively to help them overthrow and launch overthrow of the election. The what's her name? Victoria Nuland and Jeffrey Pyatt having that conversation just before the government was overthrown and putting out the legitimate government no longer existed. We put in those people. We are controlling those people. We are paying their pensions. We are giving hundreds of billions of dollars into the country. We are controlling that government in real terms. Yeah, Zelensky can act any way Zelensky wants to act. The moment that Donald Trump walks, that government falls. Figure out how to pay your pensions. Figure out how to pay your military. Figure out how to pay your medical staff. Figure out how to put up your energy grid. Figure out how to do all of this stuff without the U.S. involved. Figure out how to get hold of weapons. Europe can't do it. We're doing it. And if we are indeed control all that stuff, why are they there in negotiations, considering they're not going to be a benefit in the negotiations? Yeah, I don't leave them up. Full stop. Jin Ho Choi. Welcome to the family, my man. Welcome to the family. Australia is a beautiful country. I'm not just saying that because you became a new member. Sydney is gorgeous. Your seafood is phenomenal. The calamari, great stuff. Jinho, welcome to the family, and thank you. In fact, I want to thank all of you, not just the people who gave to the show that helped support this content. I want to thank all of you for joining me. I can't have a show without you, and I appreciate you, Whitney Webb. She also does great work. Yeah. Wendy Webb is good. I tried to get her on the show. Haven't been able to get a response from her. That's all I have to say on that one. I haven't been able to get a response. Guys, thank you. Thank you. You all have a fantastic day. Garland and I will be on the show at 4 p.m. as far as I know. I'll contact him to make sure that we're on terms. I am also going to be on Wilmer Leon's show at 11 o'clock. Oh, yeah. I will be on Wilmer's show at 11 o'clock. Today will be a long, busy day. So I want to thank all of you. You all have a fantastic day. And thank you for joining me. Jamal Thomas Morning Show, episode 122. Signing off. Have a good one all.